Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet History Vault. Tonight we step onto the Oregon Trail in winter where the snow is not pretty. Postcard snow, but a white wall pressing against your face, your wagon, your lungs, and every brave little plan you packed back in Missouri. You hear the oxen snort in the dark. You smell wet canvas, cold ashes, and fear hidden under damp wool. Somewhere ahead the trail has vanished. And yes, you probably won't survive this, which is rude of history, but history has never been known for its customer service. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights and feel the storm gather around you. You stand with your boots sunk deep in snow, not on a road anymore, but in a blank breathing world. The Oregon Trail, that long overland route used by hundreds of thousands of emigrants in the 19th century, is supposed to be a path westward. Tonight it is a trap. The ruts are gone. The landmarks are gone. Even sound seems swallowed before it can travel. You pull your collar higher. The wool scratches your chin. Your breath turns white and instantly disappears as if the air is stealing even that from you. Behind you, wagons sit in uneven shapes, canvas roofs sagging beneath wet snow. They look less like vehicles now and more like stranded boats on a frozen sea. The storm has not arrived politely. It has fallen hard with a steady, patient cruelty. Snow piles against the wheels. It clings to the oxen's backs. It drifts into the folds of blankets and sneaks through seams in clothing that seemed perfectly respectable yesterday. Yesterday, of course, you still believed in progress. Adorable. A child coughs somewhere inside a wagon. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else says the weather will break by morning, and you can hear how badly everyone needs that to be true. The Oregon Trail was never safe even in good weather. Rivers drowned people. Disease followed the camps. Wagons broke. Animals wandered. But snow is different. Snow does not merely block the way, it changes the rules. You try to remember the last clear sign of the trail, a stand of dark timber, a bend in the land, a distant ridge. But memory becomes slippery when the world turns white. Historians still argue whether some stranded emigrant parties were mainly victims of bad timing, poor guidance, or the terrible confidence that one more day of travel would somehow be fine. And there you are proving that confidence can be very chilly. Your hands ache inside your mittens, not sharp pain, yet just a deep wooden numbness. You stamp your feet and feel almost nothing. The snow squeaks under your soles, a dry high sound that should be gentle but is not. Around the camp people move slowly, conserving strength without admitting they are conserving strength. Nobody wants to be the first to say the obvious. There is no shelter. Not real shelter, not walls, not a roof that can hold against weather. The wagons provide a little cover, but canvas is only canvas, and canvas in a mountain storm is basically optimism with stitching. The wind pushes through it. The cold settles beneath it. The ground steals warmth from below, quiet and efficient. You look toward the animals. Oxen were the main power of many wagon trains because they were strong, steady, and cheaper than horses. But strength has limits. Their heads hang low. Their breath steams. Snow gathers on their horns and lashes. They chew slowly if there is anything left to chew. Hay grass browse anything green or dry enough to matter. All of it is buried now. A man tries to clear snow from a wheel with a shovel. The shovel bites down, scrapes, lifts, dumps. Again, again, again. It is the sort of work that feels heroic for 5 minutes and foolish after 10. The snow keeps falling, very committed to its craft. You hear the wind before you feel each gust. It comes over the ridge with a low moan, then slaps the camp sideways. Canvas snaps. A loose rope ticks against a wagon frame. Tinware clatters somewhere unseen. The smell of smoke drifts weakly from a fire that is more smoke than fire, more memory of warmth than warmth itself. Someone says the past cannot be far, Someone else says they should turn back. A third person says nothing at all, which may be the wisest contribution so far. The trail has trained everyone to think in miles, but the storm teaches a new measurement. Warmth, dryness, breath. Hours until dark, hours until dawn. How much strength remains in a body before it simply sits down and becomes part of the landscape? A strange little tidbit settles into your mind because human beings collect odd details even when freezing. Some emigrants carried guidebooks that promised distance as campsites and advice with great confidence, as if the West were a tidy parlour game. Yet those printed words could not tell you what to do when the sky dropped half a season on your head. A guidebook in a blizzard is a lovely object, very readable assuming your fingers still bend. The snow thickens, it softens the edges of everything. The world becomes less like a place and more like a thought you're having badly. You squint toward the front of the train where the lead wagons have stopped at an angle. Beyond them there is only whiteness and a dim suggestion of trees. If there is a trail beneath that whiteness, it is keeping its little secret. You help pull a canvas tighter over a wagon bed. Inside, a woman gathers blankets around two children. Her face is calm in the way faces become calm when panic would be inconvenient. She thanks you softly. Her voice is almost lost in the wind. You want to say morning will be better. Instead you nod. Because the first truth of being trapped in snow is not dramatic. It is practical. You cannot travel. You cannot build much. You cannot dry what is wet. You cannot feed everyone properly. And every small task now costs more than it did before. Tying a knot hurts. Carrying wood exhausts you. Walking 20 steps leaves your heart beating hard beneath your ribs. Night lowers itself without ceremony. There is no sunset, only a gradual darkening of the storm as if the whole sky has closed its eyes. The wagons become shadows. The people become voices. You tuck yourself near the leeward side of a wagon, because any side not facing the wind now feels like luxury. Snow brushes your cheeks. Meltwater creeps at your cuffs. Somewhere nearby an ox groans low and tired. You listen. The storm answers with endless, soft insistence. And as you press your hands beneath your arms, trying to save whatever warmth remains, you understand that the trail has stopped being a journey. It has become a question. How long can you endure a world that offers no roof, no road, and no promise except the next breath? By morning the wagons no longer look like wagons. They hunch beneath the snow, each one rounded and softened as if the storm has tried to erase the evidence of human ambition. Canvas bows under the weight. Wheels are half buried. Tongues vanish into drifts. The trail, if it still exists under all that whiteness, has become a rumour told by tired people with cold feet. You crawl from your miserable pocket of shelter and feel your clothes resist you. Wool has stiffened overnight. The blanket around your shoulders smells of smoke, damp hair and old sweat. Not the elegant frontier fragrance promised by paintings, perhaps, but honest. Very honest. You breathe in and the air cuts down your throat, clean and cruel. Around you others begin to stir. No one wakes rested. They rise slowly, joints protesting, faces pale above scarves and collars. The night has taken something from everyone. A little warmth, a little courage, a little of that bright conviction that the West is waiting kindly on the other side of the mountains. The wagons were built for motion. That is the bitter joke of it. Their broad beds could carry flour bedding tools, cooking pots, spare clothing, family keepsakes, sometimes even chairs or clocks brought by people who'd not yet learned what the trail would demand. But here, stopped in deep snow, they become islands. Each family clings to its own little rectangle of canvas and wood, separated from the next by white drifts and rising fear. A mainstream fact sits plainly in the cold air. Most covered wagons on the Oregon Trail were not the huge Conestoga wagons of popular imagination, but lighter farm wagons, often called prairie schooners, built to cross plains and rough roads with fewer animals. They were useful, yes, but they were not cabins. They were not fortresses. They were not designed to become winter homes in the mountains because apparently the manufacturer forgot to include the survive a frozen disaster option. You help shovel around a wheel. The snow is heavy near the wagon, packed by wind into a crust that breaks under the shovel with a dull scrape. Beneath it lies more snow, then mud, hardened by cold, then the stubborn rim of the wheel. Your breath grows fast. Your back aches. Every few minutes you pause and flex your fingers, trying to keep feeling in them. Someone tries to hitch oxen to the lead wagon. The animals stand with lowered heads, ribs faintly visible beneath their winter coats. Their hooves punch deep holes in the snow. A man clucks to them, then urges, then shouts. The oxen lean into the yoke. Leather creaks. Chains draw tight. The wagon shifts perhaps an inch, then settles again as if the earth itself has decided to keep it. There is a silence after that. Not complete silence. The wind still moves. A child sniffles. Harness metal taps softly. But the people stop pretending for a breath or two. They have seen the truth in the smallest possible measurement. An inch. That is what all the shouting, straining and hope have purchased. Historians continue to debate whether some emigrant groups trapped in mountain snow should have abandoned their wagons sooner, or whether the wagons remained psychologically necessary because they held food bedding tools and the last visible shape of home. Standing there, you understand both sides. A wagon is too heavy to save you. A wagon is also everything you own. You look at the objects piled inside one nearby wagon. A feather mattress rolled tight, a small chest, a cast iron pot, a Bible wrapped in cloth, a child's shoe, a sack of flour damp at the corners. These things are not luxuries now. They are weight, they are comfort, they are memory, they are problems. The train leaders gather near the front, stamping their feet, speaking in low voices. You catch pieces, wait for thaw, send men ahead, cut timber, make camp, turn back. No answer seems large enough. In a normal delay, people repair wheels, rest animals, bake bread, gossip, complain, and then move on. This is not normal delay. This is the land closing a fist. A quirky bit of trail life comes drifting through your thoughts while you scrape ice from a rope. Emigrants sometimes lighten their loads by tossing out heavy heirlooms along the route, and later travellers found trailside piles of books, furniture stoves and other cast-offs. The road west became in places a long outdoor attic of abandoned dreams. Out here in the snow you can almost imagine a parlour chair sitting under a drift patiently waiting for no one. The animals become the centre of every glance. Without them the wagons cannot move. Without wagons the people lose supplies. Without supplies the snow has already won. Yet the oxen need fodder and the grass is buried. Men take axes and move toward the timber, hoping to cut branches or bark. The sound of chopping begins after a while, dull and slow, each strike muffled by the storm. You go with them for a short distance. The trees stand black against the white, their branches bowed. Snow falls from one limb with a soft thump, making you flinch. The air smells faintly of resin where an axe bites into pine. Someone strips twigs and needles, muttering that the animals will eat what they are given. Another man says oxen are not goats. It is not really a joke, but a few people exhale as if it were. The camp spreads into small labours. Some dig paths between wagons. Some brush snow from canvas roofs before the weight can tear them. Some gather buffalo robes and quilts, trying to keep bedding from touching the wet ground. A woman shakes ice from a blanket and laughs once sharply when it freezes stiff again almost immediately. It is not funny. It is also in the way of disaster a little funny. The world has become ridiculous and deadly at the same time. Inside one wagon you see frost lining the underside of the canvas. Breath has frozen there overnight, turning human presence into tiny crystals. It looks beautiful, which feels insulting. Beauty has no manners. The wagon bed is crowded. People sit with knees drawn up, wrapped in layers, trying not to press too hard against one another, while also desperately needing shared warmth. The boards beneath them radiate cold. A kettle hangs uselessly until someone can coax a fire back to life. A baby whimpers, then quiets against its mother's chest. You step back outside. The sky's low and grey, the kind of grey that gives no hint of distance or time. Snow continues in fine grains, now less dramatic, but somehow more discouraging. You can manage a storm that declares itself. This quiet persistence feels personal. A few men argue about unloading a wagon to make it lighter. They pull out sacks, tools, bedding crates. Each item lands in the snow and immediately begins to vanish under fresh flakes. The wagon does rise a little on its springs, relieved of weight, but where will the goods go? What can be spared? What can be carried? Who decides that a family chest is less important than a sack of beans, or that a stove is foolish when no one can feel their toes? You lift a wooden box and feel its weight bite into your arms. Inside are dishes wrapped in cloth, plates for a table that may never be set again. You place it beneath the wagon, where snow still reaches it sideways. A small domestic gesture, almost useless, but human beings are made of such gestures. You protect the plates because you cannot protect the future. By afternoon, the conclusion has spread without announcement. The wagons will not move today. Perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not until the snow hardens or softens or stops, or decides what it wants from you. The train that once measured itself by miles now measures itself by shovelfuls, armloads of brush, mouthfuls of cold food, and the trembling strength of animals that cannot understand why the grass has disappeared. You stand between the buried wheels and listen to the camp settle into unwilling stillness. No one has chosen this place. No one would name it home. Yet the wagons, useless as travel, now become the only architecture you have. Around them people tie ropes, stretch canvas, stack goods, dig trenches and pretend these stranded islands can become a village. And in the white distance where the trail should be, there is nothing but the wind smoothing over every mark you made yesterday. The second evening arrives too quickly, as if the sun has decided not to get involved. You watch the grey light drain out of the snow, and with it goes the small courage that daylight lends to cold people. In the morning at least there had been work to do. Shoveling, cutting brush, tightening canvas, arguing about oxen, which is technically not useful, but it feels like activity. Now the camp grows still again, and stillness is when fear comes closer. You tuck yourself beside a wagon with 3 others, your backs turned toward the wind. The canvas above you snaps and shivers. Snow taps against it in restless little whispers. Someone has dragged crates and bedding into a rough barrier, and someone else has tucked a quilt over the opening. It is not shelter, not really. It is a suggestion of shelter. A polite little sketch of the concept. But you crawl beneath it anyway because the body does not demand perfection. The body simply wants the wind to stop touching it. The first night had been bad. This night is worse because you understand it now. Cold has a personality. At first it is sharp and dramatic, biting your cheeks, stinging your eyes, making you gasp like a person in a cheap theatre scene. Then it becomes patient. It creeps through sleeves under collars into boots. It waits in damp cloth. It settles in the spaces between your ribs. You can fight a gust of wind. It is harder to fight something that simply stays. A mainstream fact follows you into the dark emigrants on the Oregon Trail often slept in, or beneath their wagons, not inside cozy wagon houses as later paintings sometimes imply. The wagon bed was crowded with supplies and many people made their beds on the ground when weather allowed. Tonight weather does not allow much of anything, which is rather selfish of it. You pull your blanket close. It is damp at the edge, and that dampness feels alive. Wet wool can still hold some warmth, which is a blessing of sorts, but it is heavy, sour-smelling and unpleasant against the skin. Your shirt clings coldly at the back of your neck. Your socks are not dry. You know this because your toes keep reminding you with the persistence of tiny, miserable clerks filing complaints. Nearby, a child asks whether morning will come soon. The mother answers yes very softly. Not because she knows, but because some answers are given to protect the room around a child's heart. You stare into the dimness and let the sound of her voice pass through you like a small lamp. A man tries to build up the fire. It is little more than a glow in a shallow pit scraped through snow. Smoke slides sideways in the wind, stinging eyes, filling noses, clinging to hair and blankets. The wood is green, damp, reluctant. It hisses when the flame touches it. Sparks rise and vanish. Everyone leans toward the heat, though the heat barely reaches anyone. Historians still argue whether morale in stranded wagon camps depended more on leadership, family bonds, religious belief, or the simple existence of a visible fire after sunset. Sitting there with smoke in your throat and your knees aching, you suspect the answer is yes. All of it. Anything that tells the mind continue. The night deepens. Sounds change in the dark. During the day the camp has shape. Wagons here, animals there, trees beyond, people moving between. At night the world is made of fragments. A cough, a muffled sob, the creak of frozen leather, a rope tapping wood, snow slipping from canvas with a soft, heavy sigh. Farther out an ox shifts its weight and groans. That sound moves through the camp like a reminder that not only humans are suffering. You try to sleep, but sleep is not a door you can simply open. It is more like a shy animal, and tonight it refuses to come near. Your body jerks awake each time your head lowers. Your feet throb, then go dull. Your shoulders tighten until they seem made of rope. You press your hands between your thighs, then under your arms, searching for warmth in the little furnaces of your own body. Someone murmurs a prayer. Someone else whispers a joke too softly for you to catch, and two people laugh without sound. Human beings are strange creatures. Put them in a freezing camp with no proper shelter, and one of them will still try to be funny. Not helpful exactly, but maybe essential. A quirky frontier tidbit comes to mind, absurdly timed. Some travellers wrote in diaries about using buffalo chips, dried animal dung, as fuel on the plains where wood was scarce. It burned well enough when dry, though one imagines it did very little for the atmosphere at dinner. But here in deep snow and timber country, the problem is not only finding fuel, it is keeping anything dry enough to burn. You would accept a basket of dry buffalo chips right now, with a gratitude usually reserved for fine velvet slippers. The fire shrinks. No one says it aloud, but everyone notices. Faces fade. Hands retreat beneath blankets. The small circle of warmth tightens until it belongs only to those closest to the coals. Even they do not look warm. They look less cold, which has become a very different category. You shift your weight and feel the ground answer through every layer beneath you. Snow has been scraped away, but the frozen earth remains. It draws heat from your hip, your elbow, your ankle. You remember beds, real beds, straw ticks, quilts dried by a hearth, the wooden floor of a house, a roof. The memory is so vivid it almost hurts. You can smell bread. You can hear a door latch. You can feel the ordinary nuisance of being too warm under blankets. Imagine complaining about that. Imagine having the nerve. A gust hits the wagon and drives fine snow under the quilted opening. It dusts your face and melts against your skin. Someone curses under their breath, then apologizes as though manners are the last fence between the camp and animal fear. Another person pushes a sack against the gap. The wind simply finds another. The cold teaches you not to trust surfaces. Canvas looks solid until snow seeps through. Blankets look thick until dampness reaches the inner fold. Boots look protective until they become little prisons of ice. Even your own body, loyal companion all these years, begins to make decisions without consulting you. It shivers hard, then pauses, then shivers again. Your teeth chatter. Your jaw aches from it. In the darkness, you hear the leaders speaking outside. Their voices are low. They believe they're keeping the camp calm by not announcing every worry, which is kind and also useless, because worry travels through tone. You hear it in the pauses, You hear it in the way men stop talking when footsteps pass. You hear it in the absence of confident plans. Snow continues to fall. At some point a woman begins humming. The tune is simple, perhaps a hymn, perhaps a song from home. It is barely audible over the wind, but it steadies the people nearest her. The child who asked about morning grows quiet. Someone breathes more slowly. You do too. The song does not warm your hands, it does not dry your socks, it does not clear the pass or feed the oxen. But it places a thread through the dark and you hold it because there is little else to hold. Hours pass strangely. Sometimes you think you've slept only to realise your eyes have been open the whole time, fixed on the pale underside of canvas. Frost gathers there again each breath, becoming a fine crust above you. If daylight ever comes, it will reveal your own fear glittering overhead. Near midnight, the fire nearly dies. One of the men rises stiff and slow and feeds it. Slivers of wood kept under his coat to stay dry. The flame takes reluctantly, then brightens. For a moment, faces return from shadow. Hollow eyes, red noses, cracked lips, a child's hair escaping from a scarf. The orange light makes everyone look both alive and already remembered. You lean closer and feel a little heat touch your palms. Not enough! Enough! That is the strange arithmetic of the night. Not comfort, but continuation. Not safety, but one more hour. You learn to lower your expectations until survival itself seems almost luxurious. A sip of melted snow, a coal that still glows, a blanket that is only damp on one side, a neighbour whose shoulder blocks a little wind. These are riches now. Please admire your new estate. Toward morning the storm quiets, not stops. Quiet is not mercy yet. But the wind lowers and the snowfall becomes light enough that you can hear individual flakes brush the canvas. The camp remains trapped in darkness, but somewhere beyond the clouds the world is turning toward day. You are not warm. You are not rested. Your feet hurt, your back throbs, and your mind feels slow as frozen molasses. But you are still breathing. Around you others are still breathing too, and in a place where the snow has taken the road, the shelter, and nearly the fire that is the first small victory of the night. Morning does not arrive with warmth. It arrives with a paler shade of grey, which feels slightly rude after all that waiting. You lift your head from the stiff fold of blanket and listen before you move. The camp is quiet in that early fragile way when everyone is awake, but nobody wants to admit it yet. The storm has softened during the night, and now snow falls in small drifting flakes as gentle as feathers and about as helpful as a locked pantry. The world has been polished clean. Every footprint from yesterday is gone. Every path between wagons is filled in. The camp must be dug out again because apparently survival enjoys repetition. Your first thought is fire. Not food, not miles, not even rescue. Fire! The little bed of coals from the night before lies under a crust of ash and snow, guarded like treasure, by a man whose beard has frozen at the edges. He crouches over it with the seriousness of a priest handling a relic. Around him, people gather in silence, not wanting to breathe too hard, as if one careless sigh could ruin everything. He scrapes gently with a stick. A faint red glow appears. Everyone leans in. There it is, the tiny heart of the camp. In the 19th century, overland emigrants often carried matches, flint, steel and tinder. But keeping fire alive in wet weather could still become painfully difficult. Matches could dampen. Powder could spoil. Tinder could vanish into slush. Fire was not simply convenient. It meant hot water, cooked food like morale, and the thin comfort of believing the night could be pushed back one small circle at a time. The man feeds the coal a thread of dry cloth, then a curl of bark, then a shaving of wood from the inside of a split stick. The coal darkens, smokes, hesitates, and catches. A little flame rises blue at the bottom, yellow above, trembling like a nervous thought. Someone actually laughs. It is not a big laugh. Big laughter would crack in this cold, but it is enough. The flame has performed its tiny miracle, and for a moment the camp's mood lifts by the width of a match head. You hold your hands up, palms stiff and red. Heat touches your skin and wakes pain in your fingers. That is the unfairness of warming up. The numbness leaves and sensation returns, carrying a basket of complaints. You flex each finger slowly. They feel swollen, clumsy, borrowed from someone else, still they move. The problem, of course, is fuel. The snow has buried fallen wood. Branches on living trees are wet or green. Anything stacked outside is crusted with ice. Men and older boys move toward the timber again, axes over shoulders, boots sinking with each step. You go with them because sitting still feels worse than working, and because the fire will not feed itself. Very inconsiderate fire. The trees stand close dark trunks rising from snow that comes nearly to your knees in places. The air smells sharper here, resin and cold bark, with a faint animal musk, where some creature passed before the storm closed its trail. You brush snow from a low branch. The needles shower your sleeve. Somewhere overhead, wind moves through pine tops with a long sigh, like the forest is tired of hosting guests. You cut small limbs, choosing the driest you can find beneath the shelter of thicker branches. Each swing of the axe jolts your arms. Wood chips fly bright and raw against the snow. The sound carries strangely dull, close by then swallowed. Another man splits larger pieces, hunting for the dry interior. The outer bark may be wet, but the heartwood, if luck is kind, might take flame. Luck, sadly, is not on the supply list. One lesser-known trail detail is that some emigrants protected precious fire starters in little tins, cloth bundles or pockets close to the body, treating dry tinder almost like money. A few even carried char cloth, made by heating linen or cotton in low oxygen, until it became a material that caught sparks easily. It sounds like a magician's trick, except the grand finale is simply not freezing while trying to boil coffee. You gather an armload of brush and turn back toward camp. The snow pulls at your legs, your breath rasps. The bundle pokes your cheek and leaves a streak of resin on your glove. When you reach the fire, someone has built a crude windbreak from a wagon box, a blanket and 2 shovels stuck upright in the snow. It looks ridiculous. It also works a little, which makes it beautiful. The flame grows. Smoke thickens and crawls under the low sky. It smells bitter, wet, and comforting all at once. Children edge closer. Adults pretend not to crowd them, though everyone crowds everyone. A kettle appears, blackened and dented. Snow is packed into it, then set near the fire to melt. That is another lesson the storm gives quickly. Snow is water, yes, but not very much water. A pot full of snow becomes a disappointing puddle. You must melt and refill, as if making tea for a very thirsty ghost. Researchers continue to disagree on how much survival in trapped emigrant camps depended on practical frontier knowledge versus sheer accident. Some people knew how to bank coals, cut dry wood from inside wet logs, rig windbreaks and ration fuel. Others learned because the alternative was becoming a cautionary paragraph. Standing beside the smoky little fire, you suspect knowledge matters greatly, but luck keeps interrupting with opinions. A woman kneels by the flames and warms a small cloth before tucking it around a child's hands. Another person holds a pair of socks near the smoke, trying to dry them, without scorching holes through the toes. A man rotates his boots carefully, soles toward the heat. The smell is not pleasant. Wet leather, smoke wool, and human exhaustion create a fragrance that no candle company should ever attempt. The fire becomes the camp's clock. People measure the day by its needs, feed it, shield it, save coals, move coals, boil water, warm hands, dry cloth. Cook a little meal, if meal is still the right word for it. The flame draws labour toward itself the way a town draws roads. Yet fire also divides. Those closest receive heat. Those farther away receive smoke and envy. Families begin making smaller fires near their wagons, each one a separate struggle. A coal is carried carefully in a pan, protected under a coat. Someone slips, nearly spills it, and several voices cry out as if a baby has fallen. The coal survives. The person does too, though pride may require burial later. You help scrape a hollow beside another wagon. Snow walls rise around it, blocking some wind. A few sticks go down, then bark curls, then a precious ember. You kneel so close your eyelashes feel warm while your back freezes. This is the frontier version of balance. One side roasts, the other side becomes furniture. The ember smokes. Nothing. A woman bends close and blows slowly, steady as a lullaby. Smoke spills into her face. Her eyes water, but she does not stop. A red thread appears along the bark, then a flame small and clear. She smiles without looking up, and everyone nearby relaxes as though an important legal matter has been settled. All day fire teaches humility. Too much wind and it dies. Too much snow and it dies. Too little fuel and it dies. Pile green wood carelessly and it smothers. Leave it unattended and it fades to ash. Fire is powerful only when courted constantly. It is less a servant than a demanding little monarch. Warm, lovely, and frankly high maintenance. By afternoon the camp smells permanently of smoke. It clings to your hair and settles into your mouth. Your eyes sting. Your throat roughens. But the sight of flames changes the mind. People speak more. Someone tells a story about a man who once tried to dry trousers too close to a hearth and had to sprint outdoors half-dressed, which in present circumstances sounds less like comedy and more like prophecy. The laughter is low but real. Food begins to appear in cautious amounts. A strip of bacon, a handful of meal, coffee if someone has it, or hot water pretending to be something grander. The kettle spits and ticks. Steam rises, and you lean into it just to feel damp warmth on your face. The animals receive attention too. Men carry warmed water, though it cools nearly at once. Branches are piled near the oxen. Some beasts nose at them. Others stand dull-eyed, conserving strength. Their bodies need fuel as surely as the fire does, but there is no easy way to feed such large hunger in a buried world. As light fades again, the lesson of the day settles into you. Fire is not a single achievement. It is a relationship. You do not make it once and win. You keep making it. You keep saving it. You keep begging it to stay. The main fire is banked carefully for night. Coals are tucked beneath ash, sheltered from snow, guarded by people who now understand that a glowing ember can be more valuable than a coin, a clock, or a silver spoon in a trunk. Around the camp, smaller flames pulse faintly beside wagons, each one cupped against the dark. You sit near one, holding a tin cup of hot water between both hands. It tastes of smoke and metal. It is wonderful. The snow keeps falling beyond the circle of light. The trail remains hidden. The wagons remain trapped. No roof has appeared, no rescue has broken through, no kindly inn has unfolded itself from the trees, but the fire lives. And because the fire lives you, and the others lean closer, breathe slower, and prepare to survive one more night beneath the low white sky. By the next morning, hunger steps forward from the background and introduces itself properly. At first, it had been easy to ignore. The cold was louder. The snow was more dramatic. The fires demanded attention like tiny red nobles with smoky tempers. But now your belly feels hollow in a way that does not simply ask for breakfast. It asks what kind of day this is going to be and whether anyone in charge has checked the pantry with honest eyes. The camp begins with the same labours. Dig paths, shake snow from canvas, feed the fires, check the animals, count the people, then quietly count the food. That last task changes faces. Inside the wagons, hands pull back covers from barrels and sacks. Flour is measured by the cup instead of the scoop. Cornmeal is pinched and weighed. Beans rattle in the bottom of a bag with a sound that seems much too small. Bacon is unwrapped, inspected, wrapped again. Dried apples, coffee, salt, sugar, rice, if anyone has it, all become items in a cold little kingdom of arithmetic. You watch a woman tilt a flour sack toward the light. She does not shake it. Shaking would feel too final. Instead, she smooths the cloth with her fingers and studies the remaining weight, as if the answer might improve if treated gently. A well-known truth of the Oregon Trail is that emigrants plan their supplies carefully before leaving, often bringing flour, bacon, coffee, sugar beans, and dried fruit as staples for the journey. Yet planning for a journey is not the same as planning to be stopped beneath snow with animals failing and fires burning through precious fuel. A ration list made in spring sunlight can look very clever right up until winter begins correcting it. Breakfast is not called breakfast today. That word belongs to tables, plates, and ordinary mornings. This is distribution. A pot is set near the fire. Snow melts slowly into water. A little meal is stirred in. The porridge thickens, unevenly smoky at the edges, watery in the middle. Someone adds salt. Someone else suggests using less. The suggestion arrives too late, because salt, unlike hope, does not climb back out of the pot. You receive a small portion in a tin cup. It warms your hands before it reaches your mouth. The taste is plain, slightly burned, faintly metallic from the cup, and so welcome that you almost feel ashamed of wanting more before you have finished the first spoonful. Hunger makes manners theatrical. You take slow bites pretending slowness is satisfaction. Nearby children are fed first. No one announces that rule. It simply happens. A mother scrapes the inside of a pot with careful patience and gives the last soft bit to a child who has stopped asking for food, which is worse than asking. Another child licks a spoon until there is nothing left on it but shine. One odd detail from emigrant foodways is that some families carried sourdough starter or kept dough scraps alive through the journey, feeding them like little household pets with better travel prospects than most chairs. In better weather, bread could be baked in Dutch ovens over coals. Here, with fuel damp and flour guarded like treasure, even a rough biscuit begins to sound like royal pastry. You would applaud a biscuit. You might write poetry to it. Bad poetry, but heartfelt. The leaders talk over the stores. Their voices are low, but everyone watches them. They count days, though days have become uncertain things. How long until the snow settles enough to travel? How long until scouts return if scouts can go? How much food must remain for those too weak to move? How much should be saved for children? How much for the men who cut wood and break paths? Hunger makes every answer feel cruel. Some scholars question whether rationing in stranded wagon groups usually began early enough, or whether people delayed strict limits because admitting the need felt like surrender. You can understand the delay. To ration is to say the trouble is not temporary. To measure out a spoonful is to admit that tomorrow may be worse. People prefer hope served in generous portions even when the flour sack disagrees. By midday the cold presses hunger into the bones. Your body wants food not only for comfort but for heat. Every shiver spends energy. Every armload of wood burns strength. Every step through snow empties you a little more. The old rhythm of meals, morning, noon, evening, does not match this place. The body's working constantly and the camp is feeding it cautiously. You help carry a sack from one wagon to another where several families have agreed to combine some stores. The sack is lighter than it should be. That lightness frightens you more than its weight would. Under a canvas flap, people gather around a crate used as a table. A knife divides bacon into pieces so thin they curl. Beans are poured into a pot and counted by the handful. Flour dust clings to cold fingers. There is talk of sharing. There is also talk of guarding. Both come from fear. A generous person can become watchful when children are hungry. A selfish person can become generous when shame sits nearby. The camp is not made of heroes and villains. It is made of cold people with limited food. That is more dangerous and more human. You hear a man complain that another family brought too many keepsakes and not enough provisions. A woman snaps back that no one predicted being buried here. He mutters that some did warn about the season. She turns away. The quarrel dies because both are right enough to hurt. The animals nose at brush and bark, taking what they can. Some emigrants once relied on grass along the trail to feed oxen and mules, but snow has hidden that entire system under a white lid. The beasts are living stores of labour, and perhaps later something darker than labour. People avoid looking at that thought directly. It stands nearby anyway. In the afternoon, the camp tries to cook a larger pot of beans. This should be simple. Beans and water, heat and time. But time near a smoky, struggling fire is costly, and beans do not care about your emergency. They remain hard for a long while, stubborn little pebbles with nutritional ambitions. Someone jokes that the beans will be ready in Oregon, which earns a few weary smiles. Smoke blows into your face. Your eyes water. You stir the pot with a stick shaved clean, scraping the bottom so nothing burns. The smell rises slowly, earthy and thin, and the whole camp seems to notice. Hunger sharpens scent. A faint cooking smell can travel farther than news. When the beans are finally soft enough, portions are ladled carefully. You receive less than you want and more than someone else may receive. That knowledge sits uneasily with the warmth in your hands. You eat one bean at a time, letting each soften on your tongue. It is amazing how quickly survival turns ordinary food into ceremony. As evening lowers, the rationing becomes stricter. Food is wrapped and returned to wagons. Sacks are tied. Barrels are covered. A guard is not named, but people begin sleeping closer to supplies. Not because they expect theft exactly, because hunger has a way of inventing ideas after midnight. You remember yesterday's fire, how the camp gathered around flame as if around a promise. Today the promise is smaller, quieter, measured in spoonfuls. The snow outside the circle of wagons looks endless, but the food inside them is very finite. That contrast presses on everyone. Endless cold, limited meal, endless night, limited strength. A child asks for more. The mother says tomorrow. The word hangs in the air. Tomorrow. It has become a place where everything is stored. More food tomorrow. Clear weather tomorrow. A passable trail tomorrow. Help tomorrow. Strength tomorrow. The camp keeps putting its faith there because tonight has so little room left. You cup your hands around the last warmth of your meal and listen to the fires crackle weakly. The wind shifts. Snow whispers against canvas. Somewhere in the dark, an animal tugs at its tether and finds nothing worth eating. Hunger does not roar. Not yet. It waits. It teaches everyone to count, to save, to watch, to wonder. And as you settle into the smoky cold with an emptier belly than yesterday, you understand that survival now depends not only on what you can endure, but on how slowly you can spend what remains. The animals begin to look at you differently, or perhaps you begin to look at them differently, which is worse. All along the trail, the oxen and mules have been part of the moving world. They pulled, they strained, they stood patient in dust and heat tails, flicking at flies' hooves, lifting and falling through mud, sand river shallows and rocky slopes. They were not pets in the parlour sense, though some had names and knew familiar voices. They were working companions, living engines wrapped in hide, muscle breath and stubborn dignity. Now they stand in snow up to their knees and each breath steams out like a small ghost. You carry an armful of cut branches toward the picket line. The branches are poor feed, resinous and sharp, but the animals nose them anyway. One ox pulls at the needles, chews slowly, then stops as if the effort is hardly worth the reward. Another nudges your sleeve with a damp nose. The touch is gentle, almost trusting. It makes your stomach twist. A central fact of overland travel is that oxen were often favoured by Oregon Trail emigrants, because they were strong, steady, and could live on rough forage better than horses. They were slower, yes, and less glamorous, but this was not a vacation brochure. Oxen did the heavy work. Without them, a wagon train became a camp, and now you are very much a camp. Men move along the line, checking hooves, hides, yokes, ropes. A mule bares its teeth when someone comes too close to an ice-crusted saw near the harness mark. One of the younger men laughs nervously and says the mule still has spirit. Nobody says that spirit does not pull wagons through chest-deep snow. The enemies have names: Buck, Star, Molly, Brindle, Old Tom. Names make decisions harder. A nameless beast can become an entry in a ledger. A named one carries memory. That ox pulled your wagon across a swollen creek. That mule stumbled near a ravine and recovered. That cow gave milk for a child when the mother was ill. Try turning all that into arithmetic. The trail does it anyway. Today the leaders discuss whether any animals can be moved to a patch of timber where snow is thinner. A few men think there may be grass beneath tree cover if they dig. You go with them shovel in hand because hope often begins as manual labour. The snow under the trees is indeed shallower, but only in the way an empty cup may be less empty than another. You scrape and dig until dark soil shows, then brittle stems flattened and frozen. It is not enough, but the animals tear at it when led there, and for a few minutes the camp watches as if seeing a miracle performed by dead grass. One curious detail from trail life is that some emigrants greased wagon axles with mixtures that could include animal fat, and in desperate country, nearly every part of an animal had potential use from hide to tallow to bone. It is practical knowledge, but today practicality feels like a shadow standing too close. You do not want to think of these animals as supplies. You want them to remain creatures with warm breath and patient eyes. Researchers still disagree about how quickly stranded parties recognize that livestock could not be preserved indefinitely in deep mountain snow. Some accounts suggest people clung to animals as long as possible because they represented future movement. Others imply that hunger, weakness, and worsening weather forced grim choices sooner than anyone later wanted to admit. In the camp, debate has no tidy edges. It lives in glances, pauses, and hands resting too long on an ox's neck. By afternoon, one of the older oxen goes down. At first, people try to make it rise. They call to it. They push at its shoulder. They pull gently on the rope. The ox shifts its head, breath, steaming eyes half closed. Snow has melted beneath its body and begun to freeze again around the hair. A man curses softly not at the animal but at the whole arrangement of sky trail season and human optimism. Children are steered away. Not far enough to misunderstand, just far enough to be spared the work of seeing too clearly. The camp gathers without gathering. People stand at distances pretending to be busy. A woman folds her hands beneath her shawl. Another turns toward the wagons and wipes her face with the back of her wrist. The ox breathes. Everyone listens. You understand what comes next, though. No one says it plainly. Food is low. Meat is meat. Hide can be used. Fat can be rendered. Bones can flavour water. A living animal too weak to stand cannot pull, and if it dies frozen in the night, much may be wasted. The thought is sensible. It is also terrible. History often arrives wearing sensible boots. When the decision is made, it passes through the camp in quiet waves. The animal is put down away from the children as gently as the circumstances allow. There is no grand speech. No one wants grandness. The snow receives the sound and muffles it. You look at your hands and notice that they are shaking. The work afterward is harder than the decision because it requires touch. Men and women both help depending on strength and skill. Knives are warmed near the fire. Meat is divided carefully. Nothing can be left to sentiment. The cold for once helps preserve what would spoil in warmer weather. That feels like a cruel little gift from the same storm that caused the need. Smoke rises as strips are cooked over coals. The smell of meat spreads through camp-rich and almost shocking after days of thin porridge and beans. Your mouth waters before your mind gives permission. That is the body for you always making morally complicated announcements. You receive a small piece in the evening. It is tough, smoky, and unevenly salted. You eat it slowly with gratitude and grief braided together. Around you, others do the same. A child asks where it came from. The mother pauses, then says from Old Tom, and tells the child to thank him. The child does in a whisper. That may be the most human moment of the day. The remaining animals smell blood and smoke. They shift uneasily, ropes creaking. You carry warm water to them, though the buckets chill almost at once. One mule drinks greedily, lips splashing. An ox nudges your shoulder again, perhaps the same one as before, perhaps not. You rub the rough patch between its horns, feeling the heat of its body under your glove. You try not to count them. Of course you count them. That evening, men talk of saving the strongest teams for any possible escape. A wagon without animals is a box. A family without a wagon may still walk if strong enough, but children cannot walk far in this snow. The sick cannot. The elderly cannot. So the animals remain tied to every plan even as hunger ties them to every fear. The fires burn bright at night because meat has been cooked and fat has dripped into flames. The smell clings to the air. It comforts and unsettles everyone. You think of the long trail behind you of river crossings, where the oxen leaned into the current of dusty afternoons when they drag the wagons west while people complained about heat. Heat. Imagine that complaint now. How luxurious! Night folds over the camp. Snowflakes glitter briefly in the firelight before vanishing. The surviving animals stand as dark shapes beyond the wagons, breathing, shifting, enduring without understanding. The map that humans have drawn around them. You lie down with warmth in your belly for the first time in days, but sleep does not come easily. Each time an animal groans or stamps, you hear more than sound. You hear work, wealth movement, food affection, and future danger all tangled together. The trail has turned companions into choices, and as you close your eyes against the smoky dark, you understand that survival is not becoming harder in one dramatic leap. It is narrowing step by step until every living thing in camp must answer the same cold question. What can be spared and what cannot? Children make the cold feel larger, not because they are louder. Most of them are quieter now, tucked into blankets, pressed close to mothers, fathers, older sisters, whoever has a lap left warm enough to share. Their quiet is what frightens you. On ordinary days, children fill a camp with quarrels, questions, invented games, and the endless sticky business of wanting something. Here in the snow, they become careful. They learn too quickly that asking for more food changes adult faces. You see them in the wagons, bundled until they look like small parcels, being shipped very badly across the continent. A little girl sits with her hands inside her mother's sleeves. A boy watches the fire with solemn attention, as if he has been promoted to assistant keeper of the flame. A baby sleeps against a shawl, mouth open, breath dampening the cloth. Frost gathers along the canvas above them, and every exhale becomes part of the frozen roof. Families were central to Oregon Trail migration. Many emigrant parties included children of all ages, from infants carried in arms to teenagers, expected to work almost like adults. The trail was not only a line of wagons filled with adventurous men in hats, no matter what certain old paintings seemed determined to suggest. It was mothers, daughters, sons, grandmothers, tired toddlers, and babies who had not agreed to any of this, and would like to speak to management. You crouch near one wagon where a mother is warming strips of cloth by the fire. She tests each one against her cheek before wrapping it around a child's feet. The child does not complain, though the skin is red and tender. The mother hums under her breath, not quite a tune, more like a fence built from sound. People say children are resilient, which is often true, and also sometimes a phrase adults use when there are no better options. In camp, resilience looks like a child pretending not to be hungry, because everyone else is hungry too. It looks like an older sister giving a portion of broth to a younger brother and then licking the spoon when no one is watching. It looks like a boy carrying twigs with a seriousness beyond his years, because if his hands are busy, his fear has somewhere to go. A lesser-known detail from trail diaries is that children sometimes turned hardship into play with astonishing speed, making dolls from rags, toy animals from sticks, or games out of wagon shadows and stones. Even on dangerous journeys, they invented worlds inside the larger danger. Here one child has scratched a tiny road through snow beside a wagon wheel, and is pushing a broken spoon along it like a sled. The spoon reaches a lump of ice tips over, and the child whispers stuck. Then he laughs once. History being subtle as a falling anvil has provided him with a theme. Specialists continue to dispute how often children in stranded emigrant groups fully understood the danger around them, since later memoirs can soften fear or sharpen it depending on memory age and family pride. Watching the children now, you suspect understanding comes in pieces. They may not grasp the length of the pass or the failure of supplies, but they know adult voices have changed. They know the animals sound weaker. They know meals have become smaller. Children read weather in faces long before they read maps. The women and men of the camp work hard to protect them from the worst sights. When an animal falls, children are sent to fetch snow or sit inside. When food is counted, sacks are turned away from small eyes. When leaders argue, voices drop. Yet the camp is too cramped for secrets. Canvas does not hold back dread. Snow does not absorb every word. Children hear enough. You help carry a little boy from one wagon to another because his boots are soaked and his mother wants him near a stronger fire. He is lighter than you expect. His arms circle your neck, and his cheek is cold against yours. He smells of smoke wool and milk gone faintly sour on old cloth. He asks whether Oregon has snow. You say yes sometimes. He asks whether it has houses. You say yes. He asks whether his bed is there. For that you have no answer ready, so you say maybe a better one. He accepts this with the generous imagination of the very young. Adults make contracts with facts. Children will still trade in possibility, bless them. By noon, the camp organizes itself around keeping the smallest bodies warm. A few families combine blankets, laying them over children first, then older people, then whoever remains. A woman cuts apart an extra petticoat to make wrapping her hands. Someone turns a flour sack into a hood. A man gives up his dry socks to a daughter and jokes that his feet are naturally fond of suffering. She smiles because he wants her to, and because love sometimes means accepting a terrible joke as medicine. The fire near the children is guarded fiercely. Older boys bring shavings from split wood. Girls carry tin cups of melted snow. One child is assigned to watch for sparks falling on blankets, a duty performed with enormous dignity. The camp has discovered that even small tasks can preserve a child's sense of place. Helplessness is colder than snow. Still fear travels through the adults. A fever begins in one wagon. A baby grows too quiet in another. A child's cough deepens, wet and persistent. In the 19th century, illnesses like cholera, measles, dysentery and respiratory infections could devastate emigrant families on the trail, and cold exposure only made weak bodies weaker. Here there is no doctor stepping through a clean doorway with a black bag. There is only a mother's hand on a forehead, a cup of warm water, a bit of cloth, and every prayer ever learned. You sit near the wagon entrance while a grandmother tells the children a story. Her voice is thin but steady. She speaks of a farm left behind of apple trees in spring of a rooster so arrogant he once attacked his own reflection in a washpan. The children listen with solemn delight. Even the adults nearby lean closer, pretending to mend things. For a few minutes the storm outside becomes merely weather, in a story, not the wall around their lives. That is one way people survive without shelter, not only with wood and canvas and rationed food, but with the shelter of attention. A story can put a roof over the mind. A song can make a smaller room inside the cold. A joke can patch a tear in courage. These are not enough, of course. Nobody should try replacing a cabin with a rooster anecdote. But when cabins are unavailable, the mind gathers whatever boards it can. Evening returns. The children are settled, first wrapped in layers warmed by fire smoke. Adults tuck blankets around them with fingers that tremble from cold and exhaustion. A mother places her body between her child and the wagon opening. A father curls around two sons beneath a buffalo robe. An older sister rubs a younger child's feet until her own hands ache. You sit just outside, close enough to hear their breathing. The snow has begun again, fine and steady. It whispers over the canvas, soft as a lullaby and dangerous as a closed door. Somewhere in the dark a child murmurs in sleep, perhaps dreaming of home, perhaps Oregon, perhaps nothing at all, which may be the kindest dream tonight. You look toward the dim fires, the buried wheels, the animals standing in shadow, and you understand why the adults keep moving even when strength is nearly gone. It is not bravery in the grand, polished sense. It is smaller, fiercer, and more practical. There are children in the wagons. So the fires must live, the blankets must be dried, the food must be stretched, the paths must be dug again tomorrow and the next day, and however many days the snow demands. The camp breathes softly around them, trying to become walls. By now the word shelter has changed meaning. Once shelter meant a roof, 4 walls, a door you could close with a satisfying little click. Maybe a hearth, maybe a bed, maybe a chair no one had to justify carrying across a continent. Now shelter means anything that makes the wind lose interest in your face for 5 minutes. You stand beside a wagon studying the way snow has banked against its wheels. The wagon is stuck useless for travel, but it still offers one gift. It has shape. In a world where the snow has erased the road, the wagon's wooden sides and canvas arch give the camp something to build around. Not comfort, not safety, but edges. The first rule is to block the wind. People drag crates, sacks, broken boards and trunks into rough lines. Snow is shoveled and piled against the windward side of wagons packed down with shovels and boots, until it forms a low wall. It feels strange to use snow against snow, but here you are negotiating with the enemy by borrowing its furniture. The packed wall cuts the gusts a little, not enough to be impressive, enough to matter. During the Oregon Trail years, emigrants commonly depended on tents, wagon covers, blankets, and improvised camps rather than permanent shelters while travelling. When caught by severe weather, they used whatever materials they had at hand. Canvas rope hides, brush wagon boards, and snow itself became building supplies. It was less architecture than persuasion, but persuasion was better than lying exposed beneath a very enthusiastic sky. You help stretch a canvas from the side of one wagon to another, making a slanted lean of cloth. The canvas is stiff with cold and damp along the edges. Ropes cut into your gloves as you pull them tight. Someone wedges poles beneath the sagging middle. Snow slides off in soft sheets, then gathers again almost immediately. The canvas flaps once, twice, then steadies. Inside the space is low and dim. People stoop to enter. It smells of wet fabric smoke, bodies and wool. The ground has been covered with pine boughs cut from nearby trees. They spring faintly under your boots and release a sharp, resinous scent clean enough to feel almost cheerful. Almost. Let us not get carried away. This is still a snowbound misery hut, not a mountain spa. Still the boughs help. They lift blankets off the frozen ground. They trap a little air beneath bodies. They make the floor less wet. A woman spreads bedding over them and pats the surface with satisfaction, as if she has just arranged a guest room. The gesture is so ordinary that it softens the whole scene. Human beings are remarkable. Give them a pile of branches and they will start thinking about housekeeping. An odd detail from frontier camps is that people sometimes used every scrap of fabric, creatively turning old dresses, flour sacks, worn shirts and wagon covers into curtains, wrappings, patches and bedding. A flour sack might become a child's hood. A petticoat might become bandages. A torn shirt might become tinder. Fashion in this place has stepped aside so survival can borrow its wardrobe. You watch 2 men cut blocks of wind-packed snow and stack them along the side of the canvas shelter. The blocks are crude, uneven and crumbly, but once pressed together they hold. Snow has insulating power when packed well because it traps air. No one says it in scientific terms. They only notice that the wind is quieter behind it. Practical knowledge arrives with cold hands and no lecture. Experts differ on how much emigrant parties learned from indigenous winter survival techniques and how much they improvised from farm experience, military habits, or simple necessity. In many places along the wider trail, native knowledge of terrain, weather, food sources and shelter could be crucial. though emigrant accounts did not always acknowledge it fairly. Here in the trapped camp you suspect knowledge has many parents. Someone once saw a brush windbreak. Someone once built a snow wall. Someone once watched a fire behave under canvas and learned not to let sparks flirt with disaster. The camp becomes busy with making. A family turns the underside of a wagon into a sleeping space, digging out the snow and packing it around the edges. Another group props a wagon tongue against a drift and throws canvas over it to form a narrow tunnel of shelter. Children carry small branches. Older people sort blankets and robes. Someone uses a tin plate to scoop snow when shovels are in use elsewhere. It is not dignified, but dignity is currently unavailable due to weather. You help lay pine branches inside one shelter, placing the cut ends away from where people will sleep. Needles prick through your gloves. Sap sticks to your fingers. The scent rises each time you press a bough down. For a moment it smells like a winter church green and cold and solemn. Then smoke drifts in and reminds you that romance has limits. A fire is built just outside the opening, close enough for heat to enter, far enough to avoid setting canvas alight. Everyone eyes that distance with deep suspicion. Fire is friend monarch and potential arsonist. A small reflector is made from a metal pan and a board wrapped in a scrap of tin. The heat bounces inward a little. People murmur approval as if the laws of physics have shown unexpected manners. The shelter fills quickly. Too quickly. Bodies produce heat, but bodies also need space. People tuck knees under chins. Blankets overlap. A child's foot presses into your thigh. Someone's elbow finds your ribs with impressive determination. Still, the difference is real. The wind no longer strikes directly. Snow no longer falls into your collar. The air inside grows damp with breath, but warmer than outside. You begin to understand that shelter is not a thing. It is a gradient. Outside the wind, death stands closer. Behind a snow wall, it takes one step back. Under canvas with pine boughs beneath, and a fire near the opening, it takes another. You cannot banish it. You can inconvenience it. Tonight that will do. A man works on repairing a torn wagon covered with needle and cord. His fingers are clumsy and the stitches wander like a drunk fence, but they hold. A woman patches a gap with a piece cut from a ruined skirt. The fabric is patterned with tiny faded flowers. Now the flowers face the storm. Good for them. Someone says the wagon looks prettier. The woman says it had better look warmer. Laughter moves through the shelter, quiet and tired. Outside, others keep building. The camp becomes a cluster of half-tents. Snowbanks lean coverings and canvas pockets. No two shelters are the same. Each one reveals what a family had, what they knew, how many hands could work, and how much time the weather allowed. Some are clever, some are pathetic, most are both. As evening comes, the new arrangements are tested. Wind pushes but less fiercely. Snow falls but slides from some angles. Fires smoke, but the smoke can be managed if openings are adjusted. People learn by crouching, coughing, shifting and trying again. This is how much of survival happens. Not in bold declarations, but in tiny edits. Move the blanket lower. Pack more snow there. Raise the pole. Turn the opening away from the gust. Do not put the baby near the draft. Save that dry scrap for morning tinder. Inside your own cramped shelter, you settle onto pine boughs beneath a blanket that is only partly damp, which now qualifies as luxury lodging. Around you, breath slows. The child whose foot has claimed your thigh falls asleep with one mittened hand open beside your sleeve. The fire outside glows through the canvas seam, a warm orange line in the dark. You listen to the wind slide over the snow wall and round the wagon. It still knows where you are. It's still hunting for gaps. But for the first time since the storm closed in, the camp has answered the weather with more than endurance. It has built something. Not a cabin, not a home, but a pause. And in the pause, people sleep a little deeper while the snow keeps falling softly over roofs made of canvas branches, packed white walls, and stubborn human refusal. By the time your feet begin to hurt properly, they have already been in danger for hours. That is one of the cold's nastier tricks. It does not always announce injury with a shout. Sometimes it arrives softly disguised as numbness, as relief, as the blessed absence of feeling. You stamp your boots beside the morning fire and tell yourself that the ache returning to your toes is good news. Pain means the body is still sending messages. Silence is the message you fear. The shelters made from canvas brush and packed snow have helped. They turn the night from impossible into merely miserable, which is progress if one is grading generously. But now the camp must move through another day of labour. Paths need clearing, wood needs cutting, fires need tending, animals need checking, food needs rationing, children need warmth. The storm has not ended the list of chores, it has only made each chore colder. You step into a path shovelled between wagons. The snow walls come to your knees higher in drifted places. Beneath the new dusting lies packed snow slick where feet have polished it. Every step must be placed carefully. A fall can soak clothing, bruise bones, twist an ankle, or simply waste strength you do not have. In this camp, even clumsiness becomes expensive. Frostbite was a constant risk in severe 19th century winter travel, especially when people had wet footwear, poor circulation exhaustion, or too little food. Emigrants did not always use the modern word in the same clinical way, but they knew the danger of frozen toes, blackened fingers, and skin that stopped behaving like living skin. They knew that cold could take a body part quietly, almost politely, like a thief with excellent manners. You bend near the fire and loosen your boot. The leather has stiffened during the night. Your fingers fumble with the lace swollen and slow. When the boot comes free, the sock underneath is damp and flattened. Steam rises faintly from it in the cold air. Your toes are pale waxy at the tips with a red band where the sock wrinkled. You rub them gently, then harder, then stop because the pain sharpens. Someone tells you not to rub with snow. That old idea repeated in many cold places sounds dramatic and rugged, but it can damage already frozen skin. People on the trail had mixed advice, some useful, some dreadful, and the difference mattered. In your camp knowledge passes from mouth to mouth in fragments. Warm slowly, keep dry, move your toes. Do not sleep with wet socks. Do not put numb feet too close to flame. Do not pretend you are fine when you cannot feel the ground. A peculiar detail from emigrant accounts is how often travellers mention shoes failing at terrible moments. Soles wore through, seams split. Children outgrew boots mid-journey. Some people wrapped feet in cloth rawhide or whatever could be spared. Imagine crossing half a continent only to discover that your future depends on a piece of leather behaving itself. Shoes do not get enough respect until they become traitors. You hang your damp sock near the smoke. It stiffens first, then slowly softens. Another person hands you a rag to wrap around your foot while you wait. It smells of flour and smoke. You accept it with gratitude usually reserved for miracles. Around camp hands suffer too. Fingers crack at the knuckles. Nails darken with dirt and cold. Palms blister from shovels and axe handles, then split in the dry air. A woman trying to sew a canvas patch pauses to blow warmth into her hands. A man drops a tin cup because his fingers fail to close. He looks at the cup in the snow with exhausted betrayal, as if it has personally joined the weather. Medical historians remain divided over how many deaths in such snowbound situations came directly from freezing, and how many followed through exhaustion, infection, hunger and exposure working together. Cold rarely acts alone. It brings friends, dampness, weakness, bad sleep, thin food, small injuries. Then one morning a person cannot rise and everyone understands too late that the body has been negotiating in secret. You help an older man across a drifted gap between wagons, his boots drag. He insists he only needs a moment, then needs another. His cheeks are grey under the beard. You guide him to a seat near a sheltered fire where his daughter removes his mittens. The fingertips are too pale, her face changes, but her voice stays light. She says they will warm them. She says it as if warming is a matter of good manners. A kettle of melted snow is set aside to cool from hot to warm. Hands are held near it, not in boiling heat, not against flame. Slowly, patiently, cold injuries punish impatience. The older man tries to joke that he has never enjoyed such attention from ladies. His daughter tells him to hush. He does, smiling faintly. The camp begins checking one another more openly. A mother inspects her child's toes. A brother pulls off another brother's gloves and orders him to wiggle his fingers. Women compare socks by the fire, deciding which can be dried, which must be patched, which are beyond saving but will be worn anyway because the feet inside them are not taking suggestions. Pride thaws faster than frost when survival is watching. You walk to the animals and feel every step through the rag wrapped inside your boot. The snow squeaks. Your foot throbs. The oxen shift in their trampled hollow, their legs crusted with ice. Hooves can suffer too, and animals forced to stand in snow lose strength quickly. One mule stamps and shakes its head, ears pinned back. Its breath clouds around your sleeve as you check the rope. The animal warmth tempts you. You press your gloved hand briefly against an ox's shoulder. Heat lives there, astonishing and deep beneath hide and hair. The beast turns its head toward you, calm and tired. For a moment you envy it, its great body, then remember it envies nothing because it has no idea why humans insisted on coming this way. By midday, movement becomes a strategy. Too little and numbness creeps in. Too much and sweat dampens clothing, which becomes cold later. The balance is delicate. People learn to work in turns to open coats before overheating, to change wet wrappings when possible to keep children moving without exhausting them. The camp becomes a school of small bodily wisdom. Step carefully. Keep sleeves closed. Dry what touches skin. Do not sit long on frozen ground. Share warmth. Notice silence in fingers and toes. The strangest part is how ordinary the danger becomes. You're afraid, yes, but you're also annoyed by a bootlace, worried about a sock, proud of a dry mitten, furious at a hole in your glove. Disaster shrinks into details because details are where it enters. As the afternoon light fades, one young man admits he cannot feel two toes. The admission comes out reluctantly, almost apologetically. Several people turn at once. No one mocks him. No one says, "Walk it off." He is brought near the fire boot's removed feet, warmed with careful hands. His face tightens as pain returns, and someone murmurs that pain is good. He nods, jaw clenched, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes without drama. Pain is good. What a world where that sentence becomes comfort. Evening settles into the shelters. Socks hang like defeated flags near the smoke. Mittens dry on sticks. Feet are tucked under blankets against other legs near stones warmed by the fire and wrapped in cloth. The camp smells of damp leather pine smoke, animal breath, and the sour fatigue of people who have spent another day bargaining with cold. You lie down and flex your toes inside their ragged wrappings. They hurt. You're grateful. Outside, snow continues to smooth the paths you dug, hiding the proof of effort almost as soon as it is made. Tomorrow you will dig again. You will check your feet again. You will warm your hands slowly, save dry cloth, and listen for the dangerous quiet inside your own body. The trail is still buried. The shelters still leak. Food is still counted. But tonight you have learned another law of survival. Cold does not always strike like a blade. Sometimes it whispers, and you survive by answering before the whisper stops. By the next grey morning, someone has to leave the camp. Not because anyone wants adventure. Adventure has lost its shine. Adventure now looks like wet socks, frozen fingers, and a breakfast so small it could hide under a spoon. But waiting has its own danger. The snow may deepen. The food may shrink. The animals may fail. If help exists beyond the white ridges, someone must try to find it. The scouts are not called scouts at first. They're just men standing near the lead wagon, looking toward the pass with their mouths set tight. One has a rifle slung over his shoulder. Another carries a small bundle of food wrapped in cloth. A third ties strips of blanket around his boots for extra warmth. They speak quietly, with the camp leaders' heads bent against the wind. You stand close enough to hear pieces. Follow the creek if it can be found. Keep the ridge on the left. Mark trees if possible. Turn back before dark. Those words sound organised, almost sensible, until you look beyond the wagons and see the world they must enter. Snowfield timber slope cloud. No road, no signpost. No friendly lantern in a window. Just white distance and the terrible confidence required to step into it. In many emigrant emergencies, small parties were sent ahead or back along the route to seek assistance, locate settlements, find easier crossings, or guide rescuers. On the Oregon Trail and its branches, knowledge of distance could mean life or death. A few miles in summer might be nothing. A few miles in deep snow could swallow a day, a body, and every plan made beside the fire. The men prepare without ceremony. Ceremony would take energy. One woman presses a packet into her husband's hand. He tries to give it back, but she closes his fingers around it. Food, probably. Or a keepsake. Or both, because people are not tidy categories. Another man checks the priming of his gun, then tucks it under his coat to keep it dry. A younger fellow grins too widely and says he will be back by supper. Nobody believes supper has been properly consulted. You help bind a strip of cloth around a scout's lower leg. Snow has a way of climbing into every opening. It enters boots, cuffs, sleeves, collars, thoughts. The cloth is tied tight enough to keep out some powder, not so tight as to cut circulation. These are the little calculations that now stand between a person and permanent harm. A strange bit of overland travel lore is that some emigrants used landmarks with names that sounded grand comic or deeply practical, depending on who wrote them down. Chimney Rock, Independence Rock, Soda, Springs Devil's Gate. Names made the unfamiliar feel mapped. But in a storm like this, every landmark becomes shy. Even a mountain can vanish if the sky chooses to pull the curtain. The scouts set off. At first they are simply men walking away from camp. Their backs are hunched. Their legs lift high through the drifts. The lead man uses a long stick to test the snow ahead. Behind them the camp watches with a stillness deeper than silence. Children peer from wagon openings. Women shade their eyes. Men pretend to adjust ropes while looking past their own hands. After 50 yards the scouts are shapes. After 100 they are dark strokes. Then the snow thickens and they become memory. You feel a coldness that has nothing to do with weather. Sending people out means accepting that the camp cannot save itself by waiting alone. It also means risking the strongest walkers, the ones who cut wood, brake paths, carry water lift wheels, and keep others believing motion is possible. Hope is expensive. Writers of trail history have long disagreed about whether desperate parties should send help, seekers early, while strength remains, or conserve everyone until conditions improve. The answer changes with terrain, weather supplies, and luck. Luck again, that uninvited guest who never brings a blanket. In camp, the decision is less theory than ache. If the scouts find help, everyone praises courage. If they vanish, everyone replays the morning until it becomes a wound. The day stretches around their absence. You dig paths again, you cut wood again, you melt snow again. Repetition keeps panic from finding too much room. But everyone listens. Every gust may carry a shout. Every clump of falling snow from a tree may be footsteps. A dog, if any, had survived this far with the train would be stared at for signs. Even the oxen seem to listen, though perhaps they are simply chewing bark with the solemn focus of philosophers. Near midday, one of the older men climbs a small rise behind the wagons to watch the route. You go with him partly to help if he slips, partly because standing still near the fires has become unbearable. The climb is short but punishing. Snow grips your legs. Your lungs burn. At the top the view opens slightly. White ridges roll into cloud. Dark pines cluster in hollows. The camp below looks tiny, a scatter of patched canvas and smoke threads. The wagons that once made you feel part of a great migration now seem fragile enough to be brushed away by one careless hand. You scan the direction the scouts took. Nothing moves. The old man beside you removes his hat, wipes frost from his eyebrows, and says the land has no pity. Then he puts the hat back on and adds that pity would not pull a wagon anyway. It is almost a joke, you accept it as one. By afternoon, worry changes flavour. In the morning, people imagine the scouts pushing through snow, finding a mark, seeing a break in the weather. Now they imagine injuries, a hidden creek under snow, a wrong turn into timber, exhaustion, a fall. Men sitting down for just a moment which in deep cold can become the most dangerous comfort in the world. The camp prepares signals. If the scouts return near dark fires must be visible. Wood is gathered for a brighter burn. A pan is hung where it can be struck like a crude bell. Someone suggests firing a gun at intervals, but powder and shot are not to be spent lightly, and sound in snow country can play tricks. A shout can die quickly. A shot can echo strangely. The mountains are poor conversationalists. The children ask whether the men are coming back. Adults say yes, but not with the same ease as before. A girl asks whether they will bring bread. Her mother says maybe. Bread has become almost mythical now, a soft golden creature from another age. You carry more brush to the main fire. The smoke rises straight for a moment, then bends west. The wind is shifting. That may mean clearer weather, or worse weather. People read the sky as if it's a letter written by someone who dislikes punctuation. Near dusk, a shout comes from the rise. Everyone turns. For a few breaths, no one moves. Then people surge toward the open path between wagons. You climb onto a wagon tongue and look into the dimming white. At first, you see only trees and snow. Then a shape moves. One man. Then another. Then the third lagging behind. They return without rescue. They return with news which is both less and more than rescue. The creek is buried but can be followed in places. The snow beyond the ridge is deeper than expected. One man broke through a crust into water up to his knee and had to wrap the leg in spare cloth. They saw no settlement, no fresh trail, no smoke. They think perhaps there may be a lower route if the camp can move toward the trees to the south. Perhaps. That word enters the camp like a thin candle. Perhaps. The scouts are brought to the fire. Their faces are raw eyes red from glare and wind. One laughs shakily when given hot water as if returning alive has embarrassed him. The man with the soaked leg is stripped of wet cloth and warmed carefully. He bites his sleeve and makes no sound. People crowd close to hear. The same few details are repeated again and again, each time slightly clearer, slightly worse, slightly better, depending on the listener's need. No help nearby. A possible route. Deep snow, water hazard, timber, no sign of others, must decide soon. Night gathers while the camp turns these fragments over like coins. The scouts have not saved you. They have widened the map inside your fear. The world beyond camp is not blank anymore, but it is not kind either. It contains a creek, a ridge, a dangerous hollow, and maybe a way forward if the wagons can be lightened, if the animals can stand, if the weather holds, if bodies do not fail. So many ifs, a whole little forest of them. You settle near the fire, watching steam rise from the scouts' clothing. The men stare into the flames with the hollow look of those who have seen the size of the problem and returned carrying it. Around you the camp grows quieter, not hopeless, not hopeful, suspended. Beyond the wagons, the snow softens every track the scouts made coming home. By morning their path may be gone, but tonight you know one thing more than you knew before. The camp is not merely trapped by snow, it is trapped by uncertainty, by choices that must be made with half-frozen hands and half-known facts. And somewhere out there beyond the last visible tree, the trail waits under its white cover, silent as a secret. By now everyone understands that survival is not only axes, rifles, and shouting decisions into the wind. Much of it happens lower to the ground, closer to the fire inside wagons, under canvas, in the careful hands of women who have spent years learning how to make too little stretch, how to mend what should have been thrown away, how to keep children alive through fever, hunger, and ordinary household chaos. The storm has not invented their skill. It has simply made it impossible to ignore. You watch a woman kneel beside a smoky fire with a kettle tilted over the coals. Her skirt is tucked up away from the wet snow. Her sleeves are rolled just enough to work, though the cold bites at her wrists. She stirs a thin mixture of meal and water, keeping it from scorching, because burned food is waste, and waste now feels almost sinful. Her face is tired, but her movements are exact. Stir, scrape, lift, taste, add snow, stir again. No one calls this leadership. It is. Women travelled the Oregon Trail in great numbers, often responsible for cooking, laundry, childcare, nursing, sewing, food management, and emotional steadiness, while also walking long distances and helping with camp labour. Their work rarely sounded heroic in old retellings because history has sometimes had the imagination of a damp sock. Yet without that labour, many wagon trains would have fallen apart long before snow entered the story. The camp's women know where things are. That alone is power. They know which sack has flour, which bundle holds dry socks, which child hides food under a blanket, which man will pretend he is not ill until he falls over dramatically and inconveniences everyone. They know whose blanket is warmest, whose cough has worsened, whose hands need checking, whose temper is near breaking. In a crisis, knowledge of small things becomes a map. You help carry a cracked box to one of the shelters. Inside are needles, thread-spare buttons, scraps of cloth, a little beeswax, and the kind of household odds and ends that once seemed dull. Now the box might as well contain royal jewels. A torn mitten can become frost-bitten fingers. A ripped canvas seam can become snow in a child's bedding. A loose boot sole can become a day lost to pain. A woman draws thread through beeswax to strengthen it, then begins repairing a glove. Her needle flashes in the firelight. She works slowly because her fingers are stiff, but every stitch closes a small door against the cold. Beside her, another woman cuts strips from a ruined shirt to wrap around feet. A third warms stones near the fire, then wraps them in cloth for children to hold beneath blankets. A curious detail found in some emigrant reminiscences is that women sometimes kept diaries in tiny scraps of time writing after exhausting days, while others slept, recording weather births, deaths, meals, quarrels, and passing scenery. Imagine being half-frozen, hungry, smoky-eyed, and still thinking, yes, let me document this absolute nonsense for posterity. And thank goodness some did, because those quiet records often preserve what official accounts ignored. Today the domestic arts become survival technology. Laundry is impossible in any ordinary sense, yet cloth must be dried. Blankets are shaken, rotated, smoked and prayed over. Socks are hung near fires not too close. Boots are softened by hand. Children are turned like little loaves near warmth. Front, back, hands, feet, cheeks. Food is divided into portions that look too small, then made to feel larger with hot water and patience. Some historians have asked whether women's accounts of overland suffering were later softened by family memory, or sharpened by the need to tell hard truths that men preferred to pass over. You can feel that tension in camp. A man may say the train is delayed. A woman scraping the last meal from a sack while a child watches knows the shape of the delay in teaspoons. At midday, one woman notices that an elderly traveller has not come to the fire. She says nothing dramatic. She simply takes a cup of broth and goes. You follow with a blanket. Inside the shelter, the older woman lies curled beneath two quilts, eyes open but unfocused. Her breath is shallow. The woman with the broth slides an arm under her shoulders and speaks to her as if this were an ordinary morning call. Drink a little. That is it. No speeches, no panic, just the steady insistence of care. The older woman drinks, not much, enough. Outside, another mother is managing a child's fever. She cools the child's forehead with a damp cloth, then warms the cloth again because the air is too cold to leave anything wet for long. She checks the child's hands, feet, breathing. Someone offers advice. Someone else offers different advice. The mother listens, nods, and does what seems right. Mothers on the trail became nurses, pharmacists, judges, cooks, guards, and weather prophets, usually without applause, and often while being blamed for any missing spoon. You sit near the fire and watch 3 women discuss the rationing. Their voices are quiet but firm. They know which families have infants, which men must scout, which teenagers can work on lighter food, which sick people must have warm broth, even if others grumble. Hunger is not distributed evenly by fairness, neither is labour. The women know this, and their decisions carry the weight of the bodies, not theories. One of the men objects to giving extra food to a woman who has barely been able to rise. He says those who work need strength. A woman looks at him over the rim of the kettle and says the sick also need strength, if he prefers not to dig frozen graves. The man closes his mouth. A fine choice. The storm makes no official announcement, but the camp shifts slightly around such authority. People begin asking women where supplies are, who needs help, which child has eaten, whether a blanket may be spared. The questions reveal what has been true all along. The household is not separate from survival. The household is the engine room. As afternoon fades, a woman begins cutting apart a decorative coverlet brought from home. Someone protests softly. It is too fine, too pretty, too full of memory. She pauses, hand on the cloth. The pattern is faded roses red, once now dim in the grey light. Perhaps it lay on a marriage bed. Perhaps it warmed a child through winter back east. Perhaps it was packed because beauty seemed worth carrying. Then she cuts it. The strips become wrappings for children's feet and pads for sore shoulders beneath ropes. The roses disappear into usefulness. There is grief in that, but also defiance. The past is not being discarded. It is being transformed into one more layer against the cold. By evening, the shelters smell of broth smoke, damp wool and pine. Women move through the camp with cups, cloths, needles, and instructions. They tuck blankets. They scold men away from fires when boots begin to scorch. They pull children closer. They save scraps of fat for morning. They bank coals beneath ash. They remember who has not eaten. You lie beneath canvas while a woman nearby tells a child to sleep. Her voice is low, worn smooth by exhaustion. The child asks if they will leave soon. She answers yes when the snow allows. Not a promise exactly, more like a bridge thrown across the dark. Outside, the wind presses against the snow walls and slips past in a low whisper. The fires pulse red. Somewhere a needle continues moving through cloth by the last light. You understand now that the camp is held together not by wagons, not by ropes, not even by plans. It is held by repeated acts of maintenance, each one too small for legend and too necessary to omit. Stirring, wrapping, mending, counting, warming, watching. The storm may remember the strongest walkers and the boldest scouts. But tonight, beneath the patched canvas, survival wears a smoke-scented shawl and keeps sewing. The snow has done something worse than block the road. It has made everyone doubt whether the road was ever there. You stand near the front of the buried wagon train, staring into a white slope where the trail should turn. Yesterday, the scouts returned with fragments of knowledge. A creek, a ridge, a possible lower route through timber. Today those fragments feel less like a map and more like a dream someone described beside a smoky fire. The wind has crossed every track. New snow has filled every depression. The land has become smooth again, as if it objects to being understood. You try to picture the route from memory. The last rise before the storm, the stand of trees with one split trunk, the place where the lead oxen stumbled on hidden stones. But memory in snow country behaves badly. A ridge can look like another ridge. A tree can become any tree. Distance stretches when you're tired, then collapses when you're afraid. What seemed close in clear weather may now be half a day away, or twice that, or nowhere at all. Trail guidebooks and emigrant diaries often listed landmarks, mileage, water sources, and campsites. But those notes were only as useful as visibility, weather, and judgment allowed. The Oregon Trail was not a paved road with reassuring signs and a coffee stand every few miles, deeply tragic though that may be for your present mood. It was a braided set of routes, cut-offs, traces, river crossings, and remembered directions. Snow could turn that whole system into a blank page. The leaders gather again, their shoulders hunched, hats rimed with frost. One man kneels and draws in the snow with a stick. He marks the creek, the ridge, the wagons, the place the scouts think they reached. Then a gust of wind scatters loose powder across the drawing and the lines blur. Everyone watches the map disappear. It is a little too symbolic, honestly. The weather has a flair for drama. A woman says the timber to the south looked closer from the rise. A younger man says the creek bends west first. Another insists the pass lies ahead, and that turning aside wastes strength. A fourth says the wagons cannot go ahead at all. No voice is entirely wrong. That is the trouble. Disaster rarely offers one foolish option and one wise one. It offers 5 bad options, then asks you to choose while hungry. Cartographers of the period had mapped broad routes westward, but local knowledge often came from guides, traders, missionaries, native peoples, and earlier emigrants. In mountain country, the difference between a usable path and a deadly one might be a drainage, a slope angle, or a patch of timber that held less snow. Such things do not appear kindly when clouds sit low and every hollow is filled white. An unusual detail from overland travel is that some emigrants carved names, dates, or messages into trees' rocks, and even abandoned wagon parts, creating a rough communication network for those behind them. A note might warn of bad water or point toward a better crossing. Here, if someone had carved a message on a tree yesterday, the snow would probably have hidden the tree just to be difficult. You join a small group climbing the rise behind camp again. The climb feels longer than before. Your legs drag. Breath scrapes in your chest. At the top you turn slowly, trying to force order onto the view. Smoke from the camp rises in a thin column below. Beyond it the land rolls in white folds. Pines mark darker seams where ravines may lie. Clouds press low enough to erase the higher ridges. The old certainty of westward motion has drained away. For months the direction was simple enough. Follow the trail, keep moving, reach the next river, the next spring, the next landmark, the next valley. Now movement itself is suspect. A wrong direction could separate people from supplies. A right direction taken too late could still fail. Staying might kill slowly. Leaving might kill quickly. History is not always fond of generous choices. Modern researchers have offered differing interpretations of why some snowbound parties made decisions that later seemed reckless. Some point to bad information. Some point to exhaustion. Some to group pressure pride or the emotional force of keeping families together. From where you stand, the answer feels less like a neat cause and more like a storm inside the mind. Cold changes judgment. Hunger narrows it. Fear bends it toward whatever sounds like action. Below the wagons wait. They look absurdly small. You remember their first promise. A wagon meant direction. It meant the ability to carry a household across a continent. It meant your bedroll, your flour, your tools, your spare shoes, your family Bible, your good pan, maybe one unnecessary teacup because someone loved it. Now each wagon is a question. Can it move? Should it move? What must be thrown away? What part of home becomes too heavy for survival? Back in camp, people begin sorting again, but this time the sorting feels final. If the train tries for the lower route, loads must be cut. Not lightened politely. Cut. Boxes open. Trunks are searched. Tools are weighed in the hand. Books are touched and set aside. Extra clothing is divided. A chair leg broken for firewood snaps with a sound that makes its owner flinch. A child asked why the pretty plates are in the snow. No one answers at once. The plates are wrapped again, then unwrapped, then finally left beneath the wagon. A tiny domestic surrender. Not as dramatic as a fallen ox, not as urgent as frostbitten feet, but painful in its own quiet room. Objects carry futures inside them. Plates imagine meals, books imagine evenings. A cradle imagines a child safe enough to rock. Abandoning them means admitting the imagined future must travel lighter. The debate over direction continues in pieces all day. Near one fire, two men argue for sending another party farther along the creek. Near another, women compare the strength of children and elders, judging who could walk if wagons fail. By the animals, someone says the strongest oxen might manage if paths are broken ahead. Someone else says no animal can pull through drifts that deep. Every opinion comes with a cost attached. You notice how people begin looking at the sky more than one another. The clouds shift, thinning briefly in the west. A pale brightness appears, then closes. That small light changes the camp's mood for half an hour. People speak faster. A path might firm overnight. The snow might stop. The scouts might find the lower timber passable. Then more flakes begin to fall light but steady, and the hope folds inward again. By evening, no final decision is settled, or perhaps the decision is settling slowly like snow on canvas. Move soon if possible, lighten loads, send men ahead at first light to break trail, prepare children for walking, keep fires alive, save food, watch the animals, mark the route behind so the camp can return if the way fails. Return. The word sounds strange. Return to what buried wagons, weaker fires, smaller rations. Yet any path outward must include the possibility of retreat. Courage without retreat is sometimes just vanity wearing boots. A man cuts strips from a red blanket and ties them to branches along the edge of camp markers for tomorrow if visibility worsens. The red looks startling against the snow bright as berries, bright as warning. You help tie one to a pine limb. The cloth snaps in the wind. It is such a small sign to place against such a large wilderness. Night comes with no stars. Inside the shelter, people speak less. Maps have failed. Memory has wavered. The land has withdrawn its familiar shapes and left you with judgment which feels inadequate and very cold. You lie on pine boughs and listen to others breathing in the dark. Somewhere nearby, a woman murmurs the remembered sequence of landmarks as if reciting a prayer. Creek Ridge, Timber, Hollow Pass. Creek Ridge, Timber, Hollow Pass. You repeat it silently, not because you trust it, because the mind needs a path even when the feet cannot yet find one. Outside, snow drifts over the red cloth markers, over the wagon ruts, over the shallow maps scratched beside the fire. By morning, the camp will have to remember itself again. It will have to choose direction from smoke, rumour pain and hope. And you begin to understand that being lost is not always wandering. Sometimes it is standing perfectly still, while the world erases every sign that ever told you where you were. By the time another night folds itself over the camp, comfort has become a strange and delicate thing. It is not the comfort of warmth exactly. Warmth remains too rare for that. It is not the comfort of a full belly because no one is making that joke unless they want the flour sack to laugh back. It is the comfort of rhythm, a song at the same hour, a prayer spoken in the same voice, a story repeated because everyone already knows the ending and knowing any ending at all feels useful. The camp has begun to make rituals. Not grand ones. No bells, no church pews, no polished table, no clean floorboards. Just people huddled beneath patched canvas smoke slipping through gaps, snow brushing the outside like 1,000 soft fingers. A woman murmurs a hymn while warming cloth beside the fire. A man recites a psalm from memory, his voice rough but steady. A child counts sparks as they rise and vanish. Someone says the weather must be getting tired of itself by now. Several people agree as if the storm might hear and feel embarrassed. Religious practice was woven through many Oregon Trail communities. Families prayed, sang hymns, observed Sundays when circumstances allowed, and read from Bibles carried carefully across plains and mountains. Faith did not prevent hardship, of course. It was not a magic roof, but it gave language to fear, and language can keep fear from becoming shapeless. You sit close to the fire, knees drawn up, tin cup between your palms. The drink inside is only hot water, with a little scorched flavour from the kettle, but your body receives it as kindness. Around you faces glow and fade in the shifting light. Smoke has reddened everyone's eyes. Cold has cracked lips and roughened cheeks. Still, when the hymn begins, voices join. Softly at first, then more firmly. The sound is thin in the open air, but inside the shelter it gathers against the canvas and comes back warmer. You do not need to sing well. This is fortunate. The camp is not holding auditions. The tune matters, because it gives everyone one breath, one pace, one shared moment when the snow is not the only thing falling through the dark. One unusual little habit in some emigrant parties was the keeping of small charms or treasured objects for luck, even among people who would have denied being superstitious if asked directly. A ribbon, a coin, a lock of hair, a bit of home soil wrapped in cloth. Perfectly respectable people can become very attached to a button when the mountains start behaving badly. You see a woman touch a small locket at her throat each time the wind rises and no one comments. The camp has learned not to mock what steadies a hand. After the song, the stories begin. At first, they are practical. A man tells how to find dry wood under the lee side of a fallen trunk. A woman describes the best way to thicken broth when meal is nearly gone. Someone speaks of a crossing months earlier where a wagon nearly tipped and everyone shouted different advice at once. The memory brings laughter because it is far enough behind them to be safe. That is how people use the past. They turn old danger into present warmth. Then the stories become stranger. A boy says he heard wolves last night. Another says wolves will not come near so many fires. An older man replies that wolves are sensible creatures and likely think humans taste of smoke and bad decisions. This is accepted as natural history. Someone claims a relative once survived a blizzard by sleeping inside a hollow tree with 2 dogs and a sack of onions. No one knows what to do with the onions in this story, but the dogs are admired. Cultural historians continue to examine whether emigrant storytelling functioned mainly as entertainment, moral instruction, emotional survival, or a way of keeping group identity intact. Around this fire, such categories feel very tidy and far away. The stories do all of it. They teach, they distract, they remind people who they were before the snow reduced them to shivering figures under canvas. You notice how the children listen. Their eyes widen in firelight. Their hands forget to fidget. Even hunger steps back a little when imagination enters. A grandmother tells of a rooster back home that hated a red shawl and attacked it every wash day. The rooster has appeared before, and the children greet his return with sleepy delight. He is becoming a camp hero, this ridiculous bird marching through memory, while real oxen stand starving beyond the wagons. There is superstition too, though no one names it. A man refuses to speak too confidently about clear weather, as if hope said aloud might anger the clouds. A woman turns her cup 3 times before drinking, an old habit from her mother, she says. Someone notices that the fire burns better when a particular child feeds it twigs, and soon the child is summoned with solemn urgency whenever flames weaken. The child accepts this magical promotion with grave pride. You might smile if your face were less cold. In desperate conditions, small beliefs can become handrails. Perhaps the red cloth markers will guide you tomorrow. Perhaps the hymn keeps panic away. Perhaps the child truly does charm the fire. Perhaps not. The difference matters less than the steadiness these things give the camp. Reason remains important, yes. Please do not replace maps with lucky buttons, but reason and ritual often share a blanket when the night is long. The prayers later are quieter. Names are spoken. People left behind, people lost on the trail, people ahead in Oregon if they exist, if they wait, if they will ever know what happened in this snowbound hollow. A mother prays for her child's fever to break. A man prays for the scout's strength. Another simply says, Lord, keep us through the night and nothing more. It may be the most complete prayer anyone has. You bow your head because everyone does, or because you want to, or because lowering your face hides emotion. Motives blend in the cold. The wind moves over the shelter. Snow slides down the canvas with a soft hush. The fire snaps once and sparks rise in a brief golden swarm. For a moment the camp seems held inside a bowl of sound. Hymn, breath, ember, whisper, storm. The world outside remains hostile, but inside the little ring of human voices it becomes bearable. Later, when people settle to sleep, the rituals shrink further. A mother kisses each child's forehead in the same order. A man checks the knot on the shelter rope twice, then once more, though it has not moved. A girl tucks the broken spoon beside her blanket. Rowed in the snow, ready for tomorrow's imaginary journey. The woman with the locket touches it again and closes her eyes. You lie on pine boughs listening to the camp quiet itself. Your stomach is not full. Your feet ache. Your blanket smells permanently of smoke. Beyond the shelter, the trail remains buried, and tomorrow may demand decisions no song can soften. Yet something has changed. Not in the weather, not in the supplies, in the people. They have made a small room inside the storm, not with boards, not with nails, with voices, memory, habit, and the stubborn little ceremonies that say we are still here. And as the last hymn fades into breathing, you let the rhythm carry you while the snow keeps falling softly over canvas wagons, animals, and the fragile rituals that keep fear from freezing solid. The mountain does not look like an enemy. That is part of the trouble. In the morning light, pale and strained through cloud, the slopes rise quietly beyond the camp. Snow smooths them into soft shoulders. Pines stand dark and still. The ridges appear calm, almost sleepy, as if they have not spent days hiding the trail, exhausting animals, and turning every sensible plan into a cold riddle. The mountain does not rage, it simply remains. You stand at the edge of camp with a small party preparing to break trail toward the timber route the scouts described. Not everyone will go yet. The wagons cannot all move at once if they can move at all. First, people must test the way. The strongest walkers will push ahead, mark trees, probe drifts, and see whether the animals might follow. The rest of the camp will wait in that terrible space between decision and result. You wrap cloth around your boots, tie your coat tight, and take a staff cut from pine. The wood is rough in your glove. Its resin scent rises each time your hand shifts. You feel the eyes of the camp on your back as you step forward, and for one ridiculous moment you wish you had walked more heroically. Then your boot sinks to the knee and all heroism is cancelled due to snow. Mountain crossings were among the most difficult parts of westward migration, especially late in the season. Routes through the Rockies, the Blue Mountains, the Cascades, and nearby ranges could be dangerous, even in fair weather, with steep grades, scarce forage, sudden storms, and confusing terrain. Add deep snow and a pass becomes less a road than a negotiation with gravity. You follow the first man's tracks, placing each foot into the hole he leaves. This saves strength, though not much. Snow presses at your shins. Sometimes a crust holds your weight for half a breath, then breaks with a soft whump, dropping you suddenly. Each stumble sends cold powder into your boot tops. Behind you another traveller mutters something uncharitable about the entire continent. The creek lies somewhere to your right, hidden under snow and ice. You hear it before you see any sign of it, a muffled trickle beneath the white. That sound is unsettling. Moving water under snow means hollows, weak crust, sudden wetness. One careless step could plunge a leg into freezing water, and wet clothing out here is not a nuisance. It is a threat with teeth. An odd note from trail travel is that emigrants often gave dangerous places names after disasters, animals' arguments, or whatever mood seized the group at the time. A creek might become Bad Luck Creek, a hill might become Misery Rise, and a hollow might be remembered only because someone lost a boot there. If your party names this place honestly, it will need a very long signboard. You push through timber where snow lies unevenly. Under the trees the drifts are shallower in patches, but branches dump snow-down collars with comic cruelty. The forest smells of sap, cold bark, and faint decay beneath the frozen surface. Your staff strikes roots hidden under powder. At one point a man ahead stops and raises his hand. A ravine cuts across the route. From a distance it looked like a gentle dip. Up close it is a steep-sided gash filled with drifted snow. The bottom may be shallow. It may be deep enough to swallow a wagon. No one can tell from the surface. The scouts spread out, probing with staffs. The snow gives in places, revealing empty air below crust. You hear someone exhale slowly. Landscape historians sometimes disagree over whether emigrant parties underestimated mountain terrain, because maps simplified it, guides described it too optimistically, or hope translated every obstacle into something smaller than it was. Standing at the ravine edge, you understand how easy it is to misread the land from a distance. Snow is a liar with excellent penmanship. It writes smooth lines over broken places. The party tries a crossing where fallen branches suggest shallower ground. One man goes first, staff planted ahead. Snow collapses to his thigh, then holds. He climbs out breathing hard. Another follows, then you. The ravine's hidden side catches your boot, twisting your ankle just enough to send fear through your whole body. You freeze, then shift slowly. Pain flares but does not sharpen. You can walk. That is the entire blessing. On the far side, the slope rises toward a stand of darker trees. The snow here is deeper wind packed against the hill. Breaking trail becomes brutal. The lead men take turns. 50 steps, then another takes the front. Each person who leads carves a trench with his own body, lifting knees high, leaning into the staff, breathing like bellows. Those behind follow in the broken path, still struggling, still grateful. You imagine wagons here and feel your heart sink. A wagon wheel cannot lift like a leg. An ox cannot understand where crust will break. A child cannot climb repeatedly through drifts without being carried. The mountain is not one obstacle. It is a series of small refusals, a ravine, a hidden creek, a side slope, a drift too deep, a tree fallen across the way. Each one might be managed alone. Together they become a wall. At midday the clouds thinned briefly. Light spreads over the snow bright enough to make everyone squint. The world flashes with cruel beauty. Ice glitters on branches. The ridge ahead appears high and pale, perhaps nearer than feared, perhaps not. The camp is no longer visible behind you. That realization lands heavily. The wagons fires children, animals, all hidden by folds of land and timber. You're outside the small room, the camp built in the storm. Out here the mountain is the room and it has no door. You stop near a boulder partly buried in snow and share a little food. Not a meal, a gesture, a strip of meat hard and smoky. A mouthful of cold biscuit saved from better days by someone with admirable restraint. You chew slowly while watching clouds gather again over the ridge. No one speaks for a while. Then the younger scout says he thinks the slope beyond may lead down. May. That word again, thin and shining. The party pushes farther. The ridge does dip beyond the trees, but the descent is steep and drifted. A wagon might slide. Animals might panic. People might be forced to cut a path wide enough for wheels using axes and shovels while half-starved. It is not impossible. But impossible and nearly impossible begin to look like cousins. You mark trees with strips of cloth tying them at eye level where falling snow might not bury them quickly. Red, brown, blue, whatever scraps can be spared. They flutter faintly in the cold air. Behind you the broken trail shows as a narrow wound through the snow. Already fine flakes begin softening its edges. By the time you turn back, exhaustion has settled into your bones. The return should be easier because the path is broken, yet every step home still costs. Your ankle complains. Your shoulders ache from gripping the staff. Sweat has dampened your shirt beneath the coat, and now the dampness chills you whenever you slow. The camp appears suddenly through the trees, smoke first, then canvas, then dark figures move in between wagons. People come out to meet you before you arrive. They read your faces before asking questions. That is how news travels when words are too slow. The route exists. The route is terrible. Those two truths enter the camp together. You describe the ravine, the creek, the slope, the ridge beyond. Others ask whether wagons can pass. The leaders do not answer at once. You can see them building the picture inside their minds, placing animals, wheels, children, supplies, and weakness onto each patch of snow you describe. No part fits neatly. The mountain has revealed only enough to make the choice harder. As evening comes, people gather around fires and speak in low tones. Some say the route must be tried before food runs lower. Others say the camp should wait for clearer weather. A few suggest abandoning wagons and walking, but then eyes turn toward children, the sick, the old, the remaining supplies. Walking out sounds simple only until you count bodies. The ridges darken above the camp. Snow begins again, fine and slanting. The cloth markers out in the timber twist in the wind, small human claims against a landscape that has kept its secrets for longer than anyone here has been alive. You settle beneath canvas ankle throbbing and listen to the mountain breathe through the trees. It offers no answer. It does not care whether the train goes forward, waits turns, or vanishes. That indifference is its power, and as the fires are banked and the camp quiets, you understand that the snow did not merely trap you, it handed you to the mountain. Morning arrives with a strange feeling in the camp. Expectation, not hope exactly. Hope has been trimmed down to something quieter, something that does not make promises out loud anymore. But expectation lingers like a held breath. The scouts have returned. The route has been seen. Decisions cannot be delayed much longer. Either help comes or the camp becomes its own rescue party. You step out from beneath the shelter and notice something immediately different. The sky. It is still grey, but not the heavy pressing grey of the past days. There is space in it now, a thinning, a suggestion that the clouds might be reconsidering their career choices. The light feels less suffocating. Even the snow underfoot has a slightly different texture, crusted in places where cold night air has tightened its grip. People notice. They always notice. A man looks up and says it might hold. No one asks what it might hold. The weather presumably, the fragile chance to move, the thin thread between waiting and acting. In the history of westward travel, timing often meant everything. A single day's delay before a storm or a single day's advance through a pass could separate survival from disaster. The margin between success and failure was not always skill. Sometimes it was simply arriving when the mountain was in a slightly better mood. The camp begins to prepare. Not loudly, not with cheers. Preparation here is quiet, focused, almost grim. Wagons are opened again. This time there is less hesitation. Items are removed, considered, and set aside in the snow without the long pauses of yesterday. People have crossed an invisible line. The future will not carry everything. The future will carry only what can move. You help lift a small chest from one wagon. It is heavier than it looks. Inside are folded clothes, a few books, a wrapped bundle that might contain letters or keepsakes. The owner stands nearby, arms crossed, face unreadable. You set the chest down gently as if it might break from being looked at too hard. It stays there, not abandoned yet but not returned. A curious detail from emigrant accounts is how people often spoke of their belongings as companions, almost as extensions of themselves. A good kettle, a sturdy trunk, a quilt made by a mother or grandmother. These were not simply objects. They were continuity. Leaving them behind was not just practical, it was personal. You move on. The animals are checked again. The strongest oxen are selected for the first attempt. Their hides are brushed free of ice. Harnesses are adjusted. Ropes are examined for weakness. A man speaks softly to one ox, calling it by name, as if the animal might understand the importance of the day. Perhaps it does in its own way. Scholars have debated how much animals influence the decisions of emigrant parties. not just as resources but as limits. A route that might be possible on foot could be impossible with wagons and livestock. Yet abandoning animals meant losing transport, food, and labour all at once. The relationship between human survival and animal endurance was tightly bound and often painfully so. The first wagon is chosen. Not the heaviest, not the lightest. Something in between. A test. You join the group assigned to break the path ahead. The snow crust holds better this morning, though not perfectly. Each step still sinks, but less deeply. That small mercy feels enormous. You push forward toward the timber route following the faint markers left yesterday. Behind you the wagon creaks into motion. It is a sound that makes everyone turn. The oxen lean into their yoke. Their muscles bunch beneath their hides. The wheels, half buried, resist at first. Then slowly, with a grinding complaint, they move. Snow breaks around the rims. The wagon inches forward, then another inch, then a foot. A murmur rises from the camp. Not cheering, not yet, but something close. You move ahead, stamping down a narrow track, widening it where possible. Others follow, packing the snow-cutting's small branches, marking hazards. The ravine approaches again, that hidden gash waiting beneath its smooth cover. The crossing is tense. Ropes are tied. Men position themselves along the sides. The oxen hesitate, then step forward under urging. The wagon creaks, tilts slightly, then steadies. Snow collapses at the edges, revealing the hollow beneath. For a moment, everything holds its breath. Then the wheels find purchase. The wagon crosses. A real visible crossing. You exhale without realizing you are holding it. The rest of the morning becomes a slow, exhausting experiment. Advance a little. Stop. Adjust. Pull. Push. Rest. Repeat. Each small success builds fragile confidence. Each slip threatens to break it. By midday, 2 wagons have crossed the ravine. The third struggles. One wheel sinks deeper. The oxen strain hooves, slipping. Men push at the sides, boots sliding in the churned snow. A rope snaps with a sharp crack, sending everyone stumbling backward. No one is injured, but the sound echoes like a warning. They try again. Different angle, more hands, less weight. It works. Barely. The wagon emerges on the far side, listing slightly one wheel caked with ice. A man laughs, half hysterical, and is immediately shushed as if laughter might offend the mountain and undo everything. There is no sign of outside help, no distant riders, no rescue party, no miraculous appearance of a well-stocked cabin just beyond the next tree complete with warm bread and a polite host. Help, if it comes, will come slowly, or not at all. This is another truth the camp absorbs. They are the help. You look back toward the waiting wagons, the shelters, the people preparing to move. Children are bundled tighter. The sick are arranged in the most stable wagons. Supplies are redistributed. The abandoned items remain in the snow, small monuments to choices made under pressure. One woman returns briefly to a pile of belongings and retrieves a single object, a small book, slipping it into her coat. That is all she takes. One piece of continuity. One quiet refusal to let the future erase everything. Afternoon light fades as the work continues. Progress is measured not in miles but in yards. The camp stretches into a line, wagons inching through the timber. People moving alongside, pushing, guiding, watching for danger. Exhaustion settles into every movement. But movement exists. And that changes everything. As evening approaches, the lead wagons reach a slightly lower area where the snow thins just enough to suggest that the route might continue. Not easy, not safe, but possible. Possible is the new miracle. Fires are built again, smaller this time, because the camp is no longer gathered in one place. It is stretched along the path, a moving village, learning to survive while in motion. The shelters are simpler. The routines are broken and remade. You sit beside a small fire hand, trembling from effort, and look back at the line of wagons disappearing into the trees. No help has arrived. No rescue has saved you. But the camp has begun to move. And in a world buried by snow where every path was erased, and every plan unravelled, that slow, stubborn motion feels like the closest thing to rescue you may ever see. By the next day, time itself begins to change shape. It is no longer counted in hours or even in daylight and darkness. It is measured in effort, in how far a wagon moves before it must stop, in how long a fire can be kept alive before fuel runs thin, in how many steps your legs can manage before they tremble and insist on rest. The camp is no longer a fixed place. It is a slow-moving line through the snow. You walk beside one of the middle wagons, your staff sinking into the crust with each step. The path ahead is broken but uneven, a narrow corridor carved by bodies and hooves. Snow piles along the edges, rising like soft walls that threaten to collapse inward at any moment. Every few yards, someone has placed a branch or tied a scrap of cloth to mark danger. The air feels different down here among the trees. Less wind, more stillness. It should feel safer. It almost does. But stillness brings its own problems. Without wind to carry away smoke, fires struggle. Without open ground, visibility shrinks. You can no longer see the whole camp. Only the people nearest you move in breathing enduring. In many overland accounts, progress during difficult terrain was painfully slow, sometimes only a mile or two in an entire day. Under these conditions, even that would be considered impressive. Today the train measures its success in yards gained, obstacles passed, and people still able to walk. You hear the creak of wood constantly now. Wagon wheels grind against packed snow and hidden ice. Axles groan under uneven weight. Ropes stretch and tighten. The sound becomes part of the landscape as steady as breathing. It tells you the wagons are still moving. As long as they move, the camp has not stopped. As long as it has not stopped, there is still a direction. Ahead a call goes up. Stop. You halt, planting your staff to steady yourself. The wagon behind you bumps gently forward before settling. People gather in small clusters, speaking in low voices. The lead team has reached another obstacle, not a ravine this time, something worse in its own quiet way. A drift, deep, wide, soft beneath a thin crust. The kind of snow that looks manageable until you step into it and vanish to the waist. The path through timber has sheltered this section from wind, allowing the snow to pile undisturbed. The men at the front begin to cut a trench. Shovels scrape, boots stamp, bodies push forward, breaking the surface again and again. It is slow work, exhausting work, the kind that drains strength without offering immediate reward. You take your turn, stepping ahead, driving your legs into the drift, forcing a path where none wants to exist. Snow fills your boots again. You stop caring. One of the lesser-known challenges of winter travel is the way repeated wetting and freezing of clothing can sap energy far more quickly than dry cold alone. Each time snow enters your boots or melts into your sleeves, your body must fight to maintain warmth. That fight costs strength that cannot easily be replaced when food is limited. Behind you, a child begins to cry. Not loudly, not with the sharp panic of sudden fear. It is a tired sound, a worn-down sound, the kind that comes when a body has simply had enough of being cold and hungry and carried and told to wait. The mother murmurs to the child, shifting her weight, adjusting blankets. The line pauses not out of impatience, but because everyone understands that the smallest travellers set the pace now. A curious observation from Diaries of Hardship is how often people noted the emotional strain of listening to others suffer. Not their own pain, but the sound of it in others. A cough in the night, a child's cry, a whispered argument. Sound carries differently when there is no escape from it. The trench deepens. Men take turns at the front, rotating in and out as exhaustion builds. You watch one stumble back, chest heaving, face pale beneath the cold. Another steps forward without comment. There is no applause, no ceremony, just the quiet exchange of burden. Eventually the path is cut deep enough. The oxen are urged forward. They hesitate. Of course they hesitate. The ground ahead looks uncertain. The scent of disturbed snow, the uneven footing, the strain already in their bodies, all of it tells them this is not a good idea. But the yoke presses, the voices coax, the ropes tighten. They step, one foot then another. The wagon follows. For a moment it seems to glide, then the wheels sink. A collective breath is held. Men rush to the sides, pushing, lifting, guiding. The oxen strain, muscles trembling. Snow collapses around the wheels, filling the trench as quickly as it is made. The wagon tilts slightly, then rights itself. Another push, another step. It moves, slowly, painfully, but it moves. The line behind you inches forward, each wagon repeating the same struggle. Some pass more easily, others catch sink, require extra hands. Time stretches. What might have taken minutes in fair weather becomes hours. As afternoon fades, the camp has advanced only a short distance. But it has advanced. That is enough. Studies of survival situations often note that maintaining a sense of progress, however small, can be crucial to endurance. Without it, despair finds room to settle. Here each yard gained pushes despair back just a little, like a door held closed against a persistent wind. You glance at the people around you. Faces are drawn, movements slower, voices quieter, but no one has stopped. No one has sat down and refused to rise. Not yet. That matters. A man near you stumbles and nearly falls. You catch his arm. He nods, not looking at you, then keeps walking. Gratitude has become too heavy to carry openly. It exists, but it travels silently. The animals are worse. Their steps are shorter now. Their heads lower. One ox stumbles and recovers with visible effort. Another lags, requiring constant urging. You feel a tightening in your chest that has nothing to do with cold. The line between movement and collapse grows thinner with each hour. As evening approaches, the decision is made to stop. Not because the path is clear, not because the work is done, but because bodies have reached their limit for the day. Fires are built in scattered clusters along the narrow path. Shelters are smaller, hastier. There is less space, less protection, but no choice. The camp cannot return to its previous position. It must rest where it stands. You help gather branches, your hands moving automatically now. Cut, carry, stack. The rhythm continues even as your mind drifts. Fatigue does that. It softens thought, blurs edges, makes everything feel slightly distant. Food is distributed again. Smaller portions, always smaller. You eat without speaking, barely tasting the food. Hunger has become a constant companion, no longer surprising, no longer dramatic, just present. Night falls. The line of wagons becomes a chain of dim lights in the trees, each fire a small pulse of warmth in the vast cold. You lie beneath a makeshift shelter, listening to the quiet sounds of the camp. Breathing, coughing, the occasional shift of an animal, the crackle of fire. No songs tonight, no stories, only rest, because tomorrow will ask for the same effort again, and the day after that. And as you close your eyes, feeling the ache in every part of your body, you understand that survival is no longer about finding a way out. It is about continuing, step by step, yard by yard, breath by breath. By now the cold has begun to change people in ways no one wants to name. Not all at once, not like a door slamming. More like a candle burning lower the flame, shrinking so slowly that you only notice when the room feels dark. Courtesy becomes thinner, patience frays. Voices sharpen over things that would have seemed foolish weeks ago. A ladle, a place near the fire, a strip of cloth, a handful of meal. You see it first beside a small fire where two families share heat but not trust. One woman reaches for the kettle before the other thinks it is her turn. The movement is tiny, the reaction is not. Words pass between them quiet at first, then tight and bitter. Neither woman is cruel. Both are exhausted. Both have hungry children. Both have spent too many nights smelling smoke and damp wool while snow pressed against canvas. A hard truth of the overland trail is that emigrant groups depended on cooperation, but they were also made of separate households with separate supplies. habits, fears, and pride. A wagon train could feel like a community in motion, until scarcity asked who owned what. Then the seams showed. Snow does not create every conflict, it simply removes the cushions. You sit near the edge of the argument pretending to adjust a boot wrapping while listening because everyone listens now. Privacy has become another luxury abandoned beside the trail. The quarrel ends when an older man lifts the kettle and pours equal portions into both cups. No speech, no judgment, just division. The women look away from each other ashamed and still angry. Hunger has made everyone alert. You notice who eats quickly and who saves part for later. You notice who feeds children first and who pretends not to need food. You notice who stands too close when rations are opened. You notice your own eyes following a scrap of meat in another person's hand. And that is perhaps the worst part. Survival does not only reveal other people, it reveals you, the little watcher inside your own mind, counting bites that are not yours. Some emigrant diaries mention quarrels over road choices, livestock leadership and property, often in clipped phrases that say more than they seem to. A line like "much dissatisfaction in camp" can hide a whole day of fear, blame, and cold resentment. If someone writes about this place later, you wonder what phrase will contain all of this. Spirits low, provisions short, weather severe. Such tidy words for human beings coming apart by inches. A strange fragment of frontier custom lingers in camp even now. People still try to observe certain manners at meals even when the meal is barely a meal. A child is told not to snatch. A man says thank you for broth. Someone apologizes for stepping on a blanket. The old rules survive in miniature like china cups carried through a flood. They may seem silly, but they remind everyone that they are not only hungry animals circling a fire, yet the changes continue. One man grows silent and watchful. He spends long stretches staring at the snow beyond the trees as if the white distance is speaking to him privately. Another laughs too loudly at small things, then turns away when no one joins. A woman who once shared advice freely now keeps her family's food bundle tied beneath her own blanket. A teenage boy snaps at his younger brother, then pulls him close a moment later, both furious and frightened. Researchers still differ on how best to understand moral choices in extreme survival conditions, since later judgments can sound simple, from warm rooms with full cupboards. In the camp, morality is not gone, it is strained. It is asked to carry more than it was built for. Generosity must compete with hunger. Mercy must share space with fear. Pride must bend or break. The line of wagons moves again but slower. Every pause irritates someone. Every command is questioned. Every suggestion sounds like blame if heard through enough exhaustion. When a wheel catches in a rut hidden beneath snow, several men push from one side while others shout that the angle is wrong. The oxen strain. A child cries. Someone curses softly, then louder. The wagon lurches free and everyone stumbles forward together, united for one physical second, divided again as soon as the danger passes. You feel it in yourself. A sick woman is lifted from a wagon so bedding can be rearranged. The delay costs time. Your first thought is sympathy. Your second thought, quicker and uglier, is that the line is stopping again. You hate that second thought. It arrives anyway. Cold has made room for it. The day brings another loss among the animals. A mule collapses near the path legs, folded awkwardly beneath it, sides heaving. Men gather. The conversation is brief because everyone already knows the possible outcomes. The animal is too weak to pull, too heavy to carry, too valuable to waste. The same grim logic returns colder because it is no longer new. Children are moved ahead. Adults lower their eyes. The work is done, meat is divided, hide is saved. A few people refuse their portion at first, then take it later when hunger speaks more plainly. No one comments. The camp has stopped pretending that grief and need cannot sit on the same blanket. By late afternoon, snow begins again. Not a storm, not yet. Just a steady fall that softens the broken track and muffles the line of wagons. The sight affects people more than the actual depth. It feels like being erased while still alive. Every step, every shove, every trench cut through, drift covered again by the same pale hand. A man near the lead wagon says they should have waited. Another says waiting would have killed them. A third says nothing because both claims are true enough to be useless. Disasters love useless truths. They multiply them. You pass a pile of belongings left beside a tree, a cracked mirror, a pair of books wrapped in cloth, a broken chair back. The mirror catches a dull bit of sky and reflects no face. The books have begun to gather snow along their edges. You remember the plates in the snow, the cut coverlet with faded roses, the locket touched in the wind. Little pieces of the old self keep falling away. What remains? The body walking, the hand pushing, the voice saying rise, eat, move, wait, hold. Evening comes with the train strung along a narrow stretch beneath pines. Fires are harder to build because dry wood nearby has been stripped. People search farther out, risking deeper snow for branches sheltered under heavy limbs. When they return, tempers rise over who gets fuel first, and something small happens. The woman who guarded her food bundle earlier takes a strip of cloth and wraps the hands of the same woman she argued with that morning. No apology is spoken. The cloth is tied carefully not tucked away from the palm. The other woman looks down, then nods once. It is not forgiveness in the grand sense. It is better. It is usefulness with tenderness hidden inside. The camp is changing, yes. Cold strips away polish. Hunger exposes envy. Fear sharpens tongues. But it also reveals the stubborn roots beneath manners. People still lift one another when someone falls. They still warm a child's feet. They still divide broth even when the division hurts. They still make room by the fire, though not always cheerfully. Cheerfulness, let us admit, has filed a formal complaint and gone missing. Night settles. You lie beneath canvas so low it brushes your shoulder. Around you, people breathe in uneven rhythms. Someone whispers a prayer without finishing it. Someone else mutters in sleep. The fires burn low, guarded by those too worried to rest. You think of what survival is doing to everyone. It is not making saints. It is not making monsters. It is making tired people choose again and again whether to protect only themselves or keep some thread tied to others. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they do not. Outside, snow falls over the path, over the trees, over the place where the mule went down, over the discarded mirror reflecting nothing. And inside the thin shelter you hold your hands close to your chest, listening to the camp endure its own changing heart. The morning you begin to walk out of the storm does not feel triumphant. It feels thin. Thin light, thin food, thin strength, thin patience stretched over too many cold bones. The snow has stopped for the moment, but the pause does not feel like kindness. It feels like the mountain is waiting to see what you will do with the chance. The decision comes quietly. The wagons cannot all continue. Some will be left, not every wagon, not at once. But enough that the camp changes shape in a way everyone can see. The weakest animals can no longer pull. The deepest drifts ahead cannot take every load. People must move, and movement now means surrendering what cannot be carried by hand, by back, or by the few teams still able to strain forward. You stand beside one wagon while its contents are sorted for the last time. Food first, blankets, tools, ammunition, a kettle, dry cloth, medicines if anyone still has them, a few personal things small enough to hide inside a coat. Everything else becomes too heavy for the future. A familiar truth of the Oregon Trail is that abandoned belongings marked many difficult stretches westward. Travellers discarded furniture, stoves, books, trunks, tools, and clothing when animals weakened or terrain became too hard. The trail could look in places like a long broken household spilled across the continent. Here in the snow that old pattern becomes quieter and crueler. Things are not tossed aside in summer dust. They are placed down gently and almost immediately begin to disappear. A woman kneels by a trunk she cannot take. Inside are folded linens, letters, a comb, a small framed picture wrapped in cloth. She removes the picture and holds it close. The frame is too large. The paper inside can be slipped free. She does it slowly, as if undressing a memory. The frame remains in the trunk. The picture goes inside her bodice near warmth. A boy leaves behind the broken spoon he had pushed through snow roads in play. He looks back at it twice. His mother notices, returns, and tucks it into her pocket without a word. Not every object is too heavy. Some weigh almost nothing and hold a child together. One lesser-known detail from Overland recollections is that discarded items were sometimes later salvaged by other travellers, native people, traders or soldiers depending on place and circumstance. A thing abandoned in desperation did not always vanish from human use. A stove too heavy for one family might warm another. A strip of iron might become a tool. The trail was wasteful, yes, but also strangely full of second lives. The lead group moves first. People who can walk do so. Children are carried when they cannot. The sick ride in the lightest remaining wagons wrapped in every spare blanket that has survived the sorting. The strongest oxen are yoked. Their breath rises white in the still air. Their eyes look dull but patient, and that patience cuts deeper than complaint would. You take your place beside the line staff in hand. Your body protests before the first step, ankles sore, feet tender, back aching from nights on pine boughs and frozen ground. Hunger sits inside you like a small animal, gnawing steadily. Still you step. The path ahead is marked by broken snow and scraps of cloth tied to trees, red, brown, faded blue. Some hang loose, some are rimed with ice. They guide you through timber, past the ravine along the hidden creek where the snow crust whispers over moving water below. The first abandoned wagon remains behind you, still visible for a while between trees. Its canvas roof sags. A wheel stands half buried. Someone has tied the cover down carefully, though no one will sleep beneath it tonight. That small act feels almost tender, like closing the door of a house you cannot return to. Travel historians have long considered whether emigrants who abandoned wagons felt liberation, grief, or shame, and the answer surely depended on what had to be left and who survived afterward. In this moment, the feeling is not one thing. The wagon was burden. The wagon was home. Leaving it is both relief and wound. You move on. The line advances more quickly without every wagon, though quickly is now a generous word, meaning slightly less impossible. The snow still catches boots. The path still narrows. The oxen still struggle at slopes. But there is less creaking, less stopping, less argument over wheels sunk too deep. Bodies can follow where wagons cannot. By midday the sky opens in patches. Blue appears. Not much. Torn piece of it above the ridge. But people notice at once. Faces lift. Even the animals seem to breathe differently. Sunlight touches the snow and turns it dazzling, almost unbearable to look at. The brightness hurts your eyes and still you want to stare. After so many grey days, blue sky feels like a message from another life. The warmth is slight, but it changes the surface of the snow. Crust softens, drops fall from branches. The sound of melting begins tiny ticks and taps all around you. It is not spring, not rescue, but it is movement in the world that is not only human struggle. The camp pauses near a stand of pines where the ground dips downward. From there, the land seems to fall gently toward a lower valley. No one cheers. People have learned caution. But the shape of the land matters. Down means possible change. Lower ground may mean thinner snow, more forage, easier fires, perhaps a cabin, a road, another party help. Perhaps. That word again, still thin, still necessary. You eat a small portion of cold meat and softened meal while sitting on a fallen branch. Your legs tremble when you stop. That trembling frightens you more than the walking. Motion hides weakness. Rest reveals it. Around you others eat in silence, their faces turned toward the pale opening in the clouds. A child asks if the snow is ending. No one answers too quickly. A man says it is less angry today. That is accepted as weather wisdom. The descent begins after the short rest. It is dangerous in a different way. Going down saves breath but threatens balance. Snow hides roots and stones. A woman slips, falls hard, and lies still for one awful moment before laughing weakly. The laugh becomes a sob. 2 people help her up. She can walk. Another mercy. The remaining wagons are lowered carefully with ropes on steeper sections. Men brace wheels. Oxen strain against the pull of weight behind them. At one slope a wagon slides sideways, nearly overturning before bodies throw themselves against it. For a few heartbeats everything is shout, snow rope and cracking wood. Then it steadies. No one speaks after that for a while. Late in the day you look back. The trail behind is marked by footprints, drag marks, broken branches, dark smudges where fires burned, and here and there the shapes of things left behind. A box, a torn blanket, a wheel part. Farther back, hidden now by trees and distance, the wagons that could not follow. Snow will cover them tonight. By next week, perhaps only humps will remain. By spring, strangers may find them and wonder about the hands that packed them. You keep walking. The storm has not ended, not fully. Clouds gather again over the high ridges. The cold waits in the shadows. Food is still low. Some people are weaker than they admit. The sick remain sick. The road ahead is uncertain. But the camp is no longer buried in place. It is leaving. That matters so much that you feel it through exhaustion. Every step away from the higher snow is a small refusal to become part of it. Every footprint says, not here, not yet. Evening finds the group on slightly lower ground where snow lies thinner under dense trees. Fires are built with less struggle. The animals find a little browse. The children are wrapped close. The remaining wagons form a smaller circle, now gaps where others should have been. Those gaps feel like missing teeth. You settle near the fire and look at the people around you. They are smoke-stained, hollow-eyed, changed. They carry fewer things and more memory. Behind them in the snowy timber lie the objects that once proved who they were. Ahead lies nothing certain. Yet as the first stars appear through torn cloud, you hear the creek running more clearly beneath its ice. Water moving downhill, a sound that suggests the world still knows a way through. You close your eyes for a moment, not sleeping, only listening. The storm has not released you gently. It has made you pay in wagons, animal strength and dreams. But today your feet carried you forward, and behind you your footprints begin filling with snow, softening the proof while the survivors move on into the dim blue evening. By the time the worst of the snow lies behind you, the story has already begun changing. Not in the facts that your body knows. Your feet still ache. Your ribs still show more than they did before. Smoke has settled into your clothes so deeply that you may carry the smell to Oregon if Oregon is still kind enough to receive you. The children still wake crying from dreams of white darkness. The adults still count food with faces that have forgotten how to look casual. But even before safety fully arrives, people begin shaping what happened into words. That is what humans do. We suffer, then we narrate. We freeze, then we try to explain the snow. We lose wagons, animals, keepsakes and friends. Then someone asks later how it was, and the answer must somehow fit inside a sentence. Severe, terrible, providential, foolish, unavoidable. Each word is a little wagon trying to carry too much. The trail ahead has become easier, though not easy. Lower ground brings thinner snow, more exposed brush, and the faint return of sounds not made by crisis. Water trickles under ice. Birds move in the pines. The wind smells less like a locked door and more like damp bark and distance. The survivors, because now you may begin to use that word carefully, move with the caution of people who have learned not to trust good weather too quickly. A broad historical truth is that overland emigrants left behind many kinds of records, including letters, diaries, reminiscences, newspaper accounts, guidebooks, and later family stories. These sources created much of what people remember about the Oregon Trail today, yet they are uneven. Some voices were preserved, others vanished. Some writers softened events, Some sharpened them. Some said almost nothing, which can be its own kind of testimony. You imagine a diary entry for this morning. Snow less deep. Moved down valley. Child better. Lost one ox. Spirits improved. So tidy. So false and yet not false. How could a page contain the smell of wet canvas? The way a mother cut a rose-patterned coverlet into foot wraps. The sound of a rope snapping beside a buried wheel. The broken spoon saved for a child. The silence after an animal went down. The ridiculous importance of one coal living through the night. A peculiar detail from trail memory is that later families sometimes treasured objects that survived the journey in ways that turned ordinary things into relics. A kettle, a Bible, a spoon, a quilt, scrap. Even a wagon part might become proof that the story was real. People who would never frame a ration receipt might preserve a battered cup for generations, because a hand once held it near a snowbound fire and did not let go. The group reaches a place where the snow gives way to muddy patches beneath the trees. Mud which once annoyed everyone deeply now appears almost charming. Boots sink, wheels slip. Someone laughs and says they never thought mud would look friendly. It is not friendly, but compared with snow deep enough to swallow a road mud is practically a welcoming committee. A few of the remaining animals find exposed grass. Thin brown, winter-bitten grass, but grass. They lower their heads and pull at it with slow hunger. People watch them eat with a tenderness usually reserved for children. The oxen have carried more than wagons. They have carried possibility. Those still standing have become a part of the story too. Later interpreters have disagreed over whether such disasters should be remembered mainly as warnings against late travel examples of endurance failures of planning or tragedies produced by environmental chance. Sitting beside a lower valley fire, you feel the poverty of choosing only one. It was timing, it was weather, it was judgment, it was hunger, it was love, it was stubbornness, it was the mountain being the mountain and people being people, which is to say brave, foolish, practical, proud, and very poorly insulated. The survivors begin naming the lost. Not always aloud at first, sometimes names pass in whispers while bedding is arranged. Sometimes a child asks after someone and an adult answers too slowly. Sometimes a person looks toward the higher timber and says nothing. The camp does not have the strength for elaborate mourning, but grief does not require ceremony to exist. It sits beside the fire, takes no food, and stays awake. There are practical matters too, always practical matters. Remaining supplies must be counted, the sick must be tended, routes must be confirmed. If a settlement or station lies ahead, someone must reach it. If help can be sent back for anyone or anything left behind, the strongest must decide whether they can bear returning. Survival is untidy. It does not end when the snow thins. It continues in paperwork of the body in blisters, coughs, empty sacks, and memories that refuse to be packed neatly. You pass later in the day a tree marked with an older carving, a name perhaps half blurred by age and weather, a date, someone from another train, another year, another crisis or triumph. The letters are crude but determined. They say in their way, I was here, not famous, not grand, just here. You touch the bark with your glove. Your own party will leave marks too, maybe not carved into trees, maybe in a diary, maybe in a story told to grandchildren who listen wide-eyed under a roof with a stove glowing nearby and too much supper on the table. Maybe someone will exaggerate the depth of snow because memory enjoys tailoring its coat. Maybe someone will leave out the quarrels. Maybe someone will say everyone behaved nobly, which is kind but suspicious. Maybe someone will tell the truth, or as much truth as language permits. The Oregon Trail became one of the central migration routes in United States history, carrying settlers westward and reshaping indigenous lands, economies and communities in lasting and often devastating ways. That larger history surrounds your small snowbound story, whether the camp speaks of it or not. The road west was not empty. It crossed homelands, hunting grounds, trade networks and sacred places. Every emigrant survival tale sits inside that wider, more complicated history. The thought settles quietly. Your suffering is real. It is not the only suffering on the land. The trail remembers more than one kind of loss. As evening approaches, the group makes camp beside trees where snow clings only in patches. The fire catches more easily than before. That alone feels almost luxurious. The smoke rises cleanly. A pot simmers. The children sit closer together, drowsy but less silent. Someone begins the rooster story again, and a child corrects a detail, insisting the rooster attack the washpan twice, not once. The grandmother accepts the correction with grave respect. There it is. The story changing while everyone is still inside it. You smile into your cup. The night is cold, but not the same cold. The sky opens enough to show stars scattered above the black branches. They look impossibly clear, as if nothing terrible has ever happened beneath them. Stars are beautiful and completely unhelpful in that way. You lie back under a blanket that smells of smoke, pine, and hard travel. The snowbound camp behind you already feels distant, though your body carries it plainly. You can still see the abandoned wagons in your mind, the red cloth markers, the dim fires strung through trees, the children wrapped in cut pieces of old lives. You suspect you'll see them for years. What will the trail remember? Perhaps not your name. Perhaps not the exact number of nights, or the angle of the ravine, or the taste of that first hot water after the cold survived, but it will remember the pattern. People moving west caught by weather, stripped of certainty, held together by firecloth. Animal strength, women's hands, children's breath, and choices no one wanted. It will remember that few survived such deep entrapment unchanged, and some did not survive at all. And as sleep comes slowly, you understand that legend is not the opposite of truth. Sometimes legend is what truth becomes when it is too heavy to carry in its original form. Lower ground does not feel like rescue at first. It feels like thawing. Slow, uncertain, uncomfortable thawing. The snow thins in patches beneath the trees, then gathers again in shaded hollows, then breaks into mud where sunlight has touched it. Your boots find earth real, earth dark and wet beneath the white crust. The smell rises rich and almost shocking after days of snow smoke and frozen canvas. Soil, rotting leaves, pine needles, water moving somewhere under stones. You have not escaped the journey, not yet, but the storm has loosened its grip. The wagons that remain move with painful care. They are fewer now, lighter, scarred by the passage. Canvas hangs patched and smoky. Wheels groan. Ropes are frayed. People walk beside them like shadows of the travellers who first set out full of plans and provisions. Even the children are quieter in their relief, as if joy might startle the mountain into taking everything back. A familiar fact from Oregon Trail history is that many emigrants reach the end of the route changed by loss, illness, hardship, and the constant work of travel. Arrival was not always a shining curtain closing on suffering. It was often the beginning of more labour, more rebuilding, more remembering. The West did not hand out warm houses at the border like party favours, which seems inconsiderate but historically accurate. Still, something in the group begins to unclench. The fires catch faster. The animals find more browse. Snow no longer fills every footprint before you can turn around. A pot of broth smells stronger today because a little more can be spared. Someone finds a patch of exposed grass and calls others to see it as though grass has become a celebrity. In fairness, it has earned the attention. You sit on a fallen log and remove one boot. Your foot is sore, wrinkled, rubbed raw in places, but living. The toes move, painfully, beautifully. You wrap them again in dry cloth, dry enough at least, and laugh once under your breath. The body has become a ledger of small mercies. A curious piece of trail memory is that some survivors later kept odd souvenirs from terrible crossings. Not only grand heirlooms, but plain scraps, a saved button, a knife worn thin, a bit of quilt, a child's toy. Objects that would look worthless in a shop could hold an entire winter inside them. If you keep anything from this passage, perhaps it will be the soot-darkened tin cup, or a strip of red marker cloth, or the broken spoon that found its way back into a child's pocket. The group meets other people days later, though the moment is less dramatic than a storyteller might prefer. No trumpet, no shining rescue, no heroic rider appearing through golden mist with bread blankets and excellent timing. Instead, there is a small party travelling the opposite way along a lower track, startled to see you emerge from the timber like smoke-stained ghosts. They have news of a settlement ahead. They have a little food. They have questions, too many questions. Your group answers slowly because turning suffering into speech takes strength. Food is shared, not enough to erase hunger, enough to prove the world still contains human kindness outside your own exhausted circle. A woman cries when handed a piece of bread. Not loudly, she simply lowers her head over it, shoulders shaking. No one teases her. Bread deserves respect now. A long-running discussion among frontier historians asks how much credit survival should give to planning leadership, skill, cooperation, chance, and environmental knowledge. After what you have lived, you resist any single answer. Planning mattered until the snow buried the plan. Leadership mattered when voices wavered. Skill mattered in every fire and foot wrapping. Cooperation mattered each time broth was divided. Chance mattered everywhere, rude and powerful. Survival was not one virtue. It was a basket patched from many. As the days pass, the storm becomes past tense, though not fully past. People speak of it in fragments. When the first coal almost died, when the ox went down, when the ravine held, when the child's fever broke, when the blue sky appeared, each memory finds its place. Some are told aloud, others remain behind the eyes. The dead travel with you in silence. So do the abandoned wagons, the plates under snow, the cut coverlet, the locket, the lost animals, the fire circles buried somewhere higher in the timber. No one carries everything. Everyone carries something. The trail opens gradually. More mud, more exposed stone, more trees with snow only on the north side. Water runs clearer in the creek. Birds return with offensive cheerfulness, chirping as though they personally arranged the weather improvement. You're too tired to resent them properly. One evening the survivors camp under a sky that finally shows sunset. Not grey, fading into black, but colour. Pale gold along the horizon, then rose, then a deep blue lifting over the trees. People stop what they're doing to look. Even those who pretend not to care look anyway. The light touches faces made thinner by hunger and older by fear. It glows on canvas patches, on steam rising from a kettle, on children leaning against their mothers, on hands cracked from cold and work. You think of the first night in the snow when shelter meant only turning your back to the wind. You think of how the camp learned to build pauses from snow walls, pine boughs, wet canvas and stubborn breath. You think of women sewing while smoke burned their eyes, men breaking trail until their legs shook. Children staying quiet because they understood too much, animals leaning into impossible weight. The story is not neat. Few such stories are. Some survived because they were strong, some because others carried them, some because a fire lived, a root held, a fever eased, a scout returned, a boot remained tied, a mother stayed awake, an ox took one more step. Some did everything right and still did not make it. That is the hard edge history keeps under its blanket. You sit near the evening fire, and for the first time in many days you're warm enough to notice sleep coming gently instead of dragging you down. The flames are steady. The wind is low. The snow, now distant on the higher ridges, glows faintly under moonlight. It no longer presses against your face. It waits above quiet and pale part of the mountain again. The child with a broken spoon sits beside you, drawing a road in the dirt instead of snow. The spoon travels over bumps around stones past a tiny twig tree and finally stops beside the fire. Home, the child whispers. No one corrects the geography. Perhaps home is not always the place you meant to reach. Perhaps sometimes it is the first fire where you stop shaking, The first night no one counts every breath. The first meal that tastes like tomorrow instead of fear. You look back toward the dark line of mountains. Somewhere up there snow is covering the last signs of your passage. It hides the ruts, the ashes, the dropped scraps, the places where people knelt and prayed and argued and survived. But hidden is not forgotten. The trail keeps such things quietly. And you still breathe and keep them too. Now the story begins to soften. The fire settles lower, not dying, only resting. The camp grows still around you, one blanket pulled closer, one cup set aside, one weary body leaning into another. The terrible snowfield retreats into memory, and memory at last is allowed to be gentler than the storm itself. You're no longer standing in the white dark. You're beside a low fire on softer ground. Your hands are warm, your feet are wrapped. Somewhere nearby, water moves over stones with a patient silver sound. The wagons creak less. The animals breathe in sleep. The children dream of roads that do not vanish. The night is wide, but it is not empty. It holds the people who endured, the people who helped, the people who were loved, and the quiet courage of every small act that carried someone one breath farther. So let the snow fall now only in the mind, slow and harmless, drifting over the high ridges, over the abandoned wheels, over the old trail and its buried grief. Let it cover the sharp edges. Let it hush the wind. Let it turn hardship into distance. You can set down the shovel. You can loosen your grip on the staff. You can stop counting the rations, stop watching the clouds, stop listening for the dangerous silence in your toes. The fire is here. The blanket is here. The road for tonight asks nothing more of you. Breathe in the pine smoke, soft and fading. Breathe out the cold you carried. Let the creek murmur beyond the trees carrying meltwater, down through the dark, away from the snowbound pass, away from fear, toward valleys you do not need to reach before morning. The stars brighten above the branches. The last ember glows like a tiny red window. And somewhere far behind you the mountain keeps its secrets beneath a calm white cover, while you rest safely on this side of the story. Sweet dreams.